The sky above Metropolis tore open with a sound like reality screaming. It wasn't the clean geometric precision of a boom tube, nor the swirling vortex of a typical interdimensional portal. This was a wound, jagged, bleeding exotic radiation across 3 city blocks, crackling with energies that made the hair stand up on every person within a mile radius. STAR Labs instruments went haywire. LexCorp's satellite array registered power signatures that shouldn't exist. And in the Watchtower, 7,000 miles above Earth, alarms began to wail. Something fell through the rift. No graceful descent, no controlled entry, just a 287-pound object in olive drab armor, plummeting at terminal velocity toward Centennial Park, trailing sparks and dissipating energy that tasted like ozone and burnt copper. The MJOLNIR. Mark 6 armor's energy shields flared incandescent, bleeding off kinetic energy in stuttering bursts as its occupant worked the thrusters. Weakened, damaged, but still functional. Master Chief Petty Officer John-117 hit the ground like a meteor. The impact crater was 8 feet wide and 2 feet deep. Soil and grass fountained outward. Car alarms shrieked for 3 blocks. And in the center, one knee driven into scorched earth, the Spartan's shields collapsed with a sound like breaking glass, finally overwhelmed by forces no Covenant weapon had ever managed to inflict. For 3 seconds, John didn't move. His HUD was a catastrophe of error messages and recalibrating systems. His motion tracker spun uselessly, registering contacts everywhere and nowhere. And the fusion reactor that powered his armor was intact, thank God. But something was wrong. The energy patterns were off. Shield recharge wasn't initializing properly. And Cortana wasn't answering. "Cortana," he said, his voice rough even through the armor's external speakers. "Status report." Silence. "Cortana, respond." Nothing but the wail of distant sirens and the shocked murmurs of civilians who'd watched a man fall from a hole in space. John forced himself to stand, joints protesting, and performed a tactical assessment. His motion tracker was registering hundreds of contacts, the entire park's population, panicking, running. His shields were at 0, recharge rate showing 30% below normal. That couldn't be right. He ran a diagnostic. The armor's reactor was fine. Power distribution was fine. But the recharge cycle kept stuttering, as if the armor couldn't quite figure out how to pull energy from the surrounding environment. Different universe, different rules. The thought came clinically, the way all his thoughts did in combat. He'd been investigating Forerunner artifacts on Installation 07 when something had gone catastrophically wrong. A Forerunner portal network intersecting with what his sensors had registered as a Covenant slip-space rupture. Except the energy signature was all wrong, aggressive, reality warping in ways that made slip-space look gentle. He'd been pulled in before he could react, Cortana screaming warnings that cut off mid-sentence as the dimensions twisted around him. Now he was somewhere else. John's eyes swept the park through his visor's HUD on a strange architecture. Art Deco mixed with futuristic elements that didn't match any human colony he knew. The civilians wore clothing that was simultaneously familiar and alien. No UNSC presence. No orbital defense platforms visible in the sky. And the city rising beyond the park was wrong. Too clean, too intact, too peaceful for any world that knew the Covenant existed. A woman was staring at him from 30 feet away, phone held up, recording. Dozens of others were doing the same. Some were running, most were just watching, waiting to see what the armored giant would do. "Attention unidentified combatant," a voice boomed from above, amplified, authoritative, with a strange accent John couldn't place. You are in violation of Metropolis airspace. Stand down and identify yourself immediately. John looked up. When the man floating 50 feet above him wore a cape. A cape. Red, billowing in wind that didn't exist. And beneath it, a blue suit with a red symbol on the chest. An angular S that seemed to catch the sunlight like a beacon. The man's face was clean-cut, square-jawed, archetypal hero from some pre-war propaganda poster. But it was his eyes that made John's threat assessment spike into the red. They glowed faintly, like barely restrained energy, and the way he hovered there, perfectly still, defying gravity with no visible propulsion system, spoke of power John had only seen in Forerunner Ancilla's. Not human. Couldn't be. No human could fly like that. I said identify yourself, the floating man repeated, descending slowly, two hands raised in a gesture that was probably meant to be non-threatening. But from John's perspective, looked like a predator deciding whether to strike. You came through some kind of dimensional tear. My name is Superman. I'm here to help. But I need you to tell me who you are and what you're doing here. Superman. The name meant nothing. But the tone, authoritative, accustomed to being obeyed, triggered something in John's tactical awareness. Military? Government? Something else? His shields were still at 0. 37 rounds in his assault rifle's magazine, 2 frag grenades, a combat knife, against an enemy that could fly and had energy manipulation capabilities he couldn't even classify yet. John had fought worse odds. Master Chief Petty Officer John-117, United Nations Space Command, he said, on keeping his voice level and his stance neutral. Not aggressive, but ready. Always ready. I don't know where I am. I don't know how I got here, but I'm not a threat to civilians. Superman landed 20 feet away, boots touching grass without making a sound. Up close, he was massive. Not in the way Spartans were massive, not armored bulk, but just substantial, like reality bent around him slightly. His eyes swept over John's armor with an intensity that felt like being scanned. United Nations Space Command, Superman repeated slowly. I've never heard of it. And that armor, it's like nothing on Earth. Are you from another planet? Another planet, not another dimension. Which meant this universe's humanity either didn't have interstellar capability yet, or this Superman didn't know about it. Either way, John was operating in a complete intelligence vacuum. Negative, John said. Human, Earth, but not your Earth, apparently. For a moment, Superman's expression shifted. Surprise, then understanding, then something almost like sympathy. Another Earth, another dimension. He glanced up at the still crackling rift in the sky, which was beginning to collapse in on itself with the sound of thunder. That would explain the energy readings. Are there others? Did anyone else come through with you? Negative, I was alone. The rift sealed with a final flash of light that made everyone in the park shield their eyes. When it faded, there was nothing. Just normal sky, normal clouds, as if reality had stitched itself back together. John's motion tracker registered the exact moment it closed. All those strange energy signatures vanished. John replaced by nothing useful. Just thermal readings and movement that his armor still couldn't quite interpret correctly. He was stranded. The realization came with the same cold clarity as every tactical setback he'd ever faced. No UNSC, no slipspace capability, no way home. Mission parameters: survive, gather intelligence, find allies, or eliminate threats, adapt. If you want to see more crossover battles and unexpected universe collisions, Hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and universe you'd want to see in the comments below. Let's explore the infinite together. Superman was saying something about taking him somewhere safe, somewhere they could talk, figure out what happened, maybe find a way to send him home. The offer sounded genuine. This Superman seemed to actually care about helping. But John had learned long ago that genuine intentions didn't always equal good outcomes. He needed information. He needed to understand this world's power structures, its threats, its rules before he committed to anything. And he needed to figure out why his shields were recharging at 68% efficiency and what the hell had happened to Cortana. "I appreciate the offer," John said carefully, watching Superman's body language for any sign of threat. "But I need to understand the situation first. Where am I? What year is it? And what was that energy signature that pulled me through?" Superman opened his mouth to answer, but another voice cut through the air. This one coming from John's armor's external audio receptors, a transmission on a frequency that shouldn't exist, encrypted with protocols that predated slip-space travel. "Master Chief," the voice said, distorted but clearly human, clearly studying him. "Welcome to Earth, the real Earth. My name is Lex Luthor, and I think you and I need to have a conversation about what it means to be human in a world of gods." Superman's expression hardened instantly, his eyes sweeping the park perimeter. "Luthor? Of course you'd be monitoring this." But John was already running threat assessments, cataloging the players, understanding with perfect Spartan clarity that he'd just landed in the middle of a conflict he didn't understand between powers he couldn't yet measure. Which meant he needed to do what Spartans did best: adapt, improvise, and survive until he had enough intelligence to complete the mission, whatever that mission turned out to be. Superman's jaw tightened, his cape snapping in a wind that still wasn't there. "Chief, don't listen to him. Lex Luthor is a visionary," the voice in John's helmet interrupted smoothly. "A human being who believes that humanity's survival shouldn't depend on the whims of alien gods. Which, given your situation, Master Chief, seems rather relevant. You fell through a dimensional rift caused by what my satellites registered as a boom tube malfunction intersecting with unknown, exotic energy. That rift is closed now. You're stranded on an Earth that isn't yours, surrounded by beings who can level cities with a thought. Tell me, do you really want to trust the alien who could crush you without effort? Or the human who understands what it means to fight from a position of weakness?" John's HUD displayed the transmission source. Multiple relay points bouncing across the city, untraceable. Professional work. Military-grade OPSEC or better. Which meant this Luthor had resources, infrastructure, and most importantly, he'd been ready. Monitoring the rift, analyzing John's armor, bypassing UNSC encryption protocols that should have been unbreakable in this universe. That took preparation, intelligence, capability. "How did you access this frequency?" John asked, directing the question into the encrypted channel while keeping his eyes on Superman. "I own 40% of the telecommunications infrastructure in Metropolis," Luthor replied. "And your armor is broadcasting on every spectrum from radio to quantum. Impressive technology. By the way, self-contained fusion reactor, energy shielding, neural interface architecture. You're not just a soldier. You're a prototype, a proof of concept that humanity doesn't need to worship at the altar of Kryptonian power to defend itself." Superman took a step forward, hands still raised but tension radiating from every line of his body. "Chief, Luthor is one of the most dangerous men on this planet. He's manipulative, ruthless, accurate," Luthor said. "But unlike our caped friend, I don't pretend to be something I'm not. Superman plays the hero, the savior, the benevolent god watching over primitive humanity. I'm just a man who refuses to kneel. Rather like yourself, I imagine. Tell me, Master Chief, in your universe, do humans wait for miracles? Or do they build their own salvation? John remained silent, processing. Well, the dynamic was clear enough. Superman represented overwhelming power with apparently noble intentions. Luthor represented human ambition with questionable methods. Classic asymmetric conflict with ideological elements. He'd seen variations of it 100 times. Insurrectionists versus UNSC, colonists versus Earth government, humanity versus Covenant. Different players, same fundamental tension. But he had data gaps the size of star systems. He didn't know this world's history. Didn't know if Superman was genuinely benevolent or simply effective propaganda. Didn't know if Luthor was a freedom fighter or a monster wrapped in populist rhetoric. Couldn't trust either one until he had independent verification. I need time, John said finally, addressing Superman directly. To understand where I am, what happened. I'm not hostile, but I'm not making commitments until I have more information. Superman's expression softened slightly. I understand. But you should know, Luthor will say anything to turn you against me. He sees me as a threat to humanity simply because I'm not human. He's tried to kill me 17 times in the past 3 years. 18, Luthor corrected pleasantly. You missed the satellite-based red sun radiation projector last month. It failed, obviously, but points for effort. And I don't want to turn the Master Chief against you, Superman. I simply want to offer him a choice. Alliance with an alien who could destroy this city by accident, or partnership with a human who understands that power should be earned, and not inherited through genetic lottery. John's motion tracker registered new contacts. Vehicles approaching fast from 3 different directions. Police response, probably, or military. His shields were at 42% and climbing, but still recharging slower than normal. The MA-5D assault rifle maglocked to his back had 37 rounds. He had maybe 3 minutes before this situation got significantly more complicated. I'm not interested in partnerships right now, John said. Either of you. I need a sit rep on this planet's tactical situation, access to technical specifications for my armor's compatibility issues, and information about the energy signature that pulled me here. After that, I'll consider my options. The Justice League can provide all of that, Superman said immediately. We have facilities, scientists, people who've dealt with dimensional anomalies before. Batman especially. He's one of the greatest minds on Earth. If anyone can help you get home, it's him. Batman, Luthor said, and John could hear the smile in his voice. Yes, the billionaire who dresses like a rodent and beats petty criminals into submission. Very scientific, very helpful. Alternatively, Master Chief, LexCorp employs 12 Nobel laureates, operates the most advanced physics laboratories outside of STAR labs, and has successfully reverse-engineered Kryptonian, Thanagarian, and Apocalyptian technology. We also don't require you to join a team of colorful personalities who think every problem can be solved by punching it hard enough. The sirens were closer now. John could see the flashing lights through the park's tree line, multiple vehicles, on law enforcement markings moving to establish a perimeter. Standard containment protocol for an unknown threat. They'd cordon off the area, evacuate civilians, then either attempt negotiation or escalation depending on his response. He needed to move. Staying here meant getting boxed in, forced into a position where his tactical options narrowed to compliance or conflict. And conflict with local law enforcement, when he didn't even understand the geopolitical situation, was a losing proposition. "I'm not going anywhere with either of you," John said flatly. "Not yet. Superman, I appreciate the offer. Luthor, I'll consider it. But right now, I operate independently until I have enough intelligence to make informed decisions." Superman's eyes narrowed. "That's not safe. You don't know this world. There are threats here that... I've survived 30 years of combat against an alien hegemony that wanted to exterminate my species." John interrupted. "I'll manage." For a moment, something shifted in Superman's posture. Not quite recognition, but understanding. The look of someone who'd seen war up close. "I get it. You're a soldier. You don't trust easily. But this isn't a battlefield, Chief. This is Earth. Billions of innocent people who don't deserve to be collateral damage if something goes wrong." "Agreed," John said, "which is why I'm leaving before the situation escalates." He moved before Superman could respond, not toward the perimeter where police vehicles were setting up roadblocks, but toward the densest cluster of buildings east of the park. Urban environment, tight corridors, limited sight lines, the terrain that favored infantry combat over flying opponents with energy projection capabilities. "Wait," Superman started. John didn't wait. He'd analyzed Superman's body language for the past 4 minutes. The Kryptonian, if that's what he was, didn't want to fight. Wouldn't strike first against someone who hadn't demonstrated hostile intent, which gave John exactly the window he needed. He hit the park's edge at 40 kilometers per hour, MJOLNIR armor propelling him across the manicured grass in long, ground-eating strides. Civilians scattered. Someone screamed. His motion tracker registered Superman lifting off, moving to intercept, and then stopping, hovering, watching. Good. The alien had restraint. That was tactically valuable information. John vaulted a decorative fence, now landed in a city street that looked like something from pre-war Earth, except cleaner, more optimistic, and sprinted into an alley between 2 buildings that had to be 60 stories tall each. His shields hit 68%. The armor's reactor was running smooth. Motion tracker was still glitchy, but functional enough for basic awareness. "Impressive," Luthor's voice said in his helmet. "Most people either grovel before Superman or try to fight him. You simply walked away. That takes confidence, or experience. My satellites are tracking you, by the way. You're heading toward the industrial district. Abandoned warehouses, minimal civilian presence. Tactically sound. I can have a transport there in 6 minutes if you'd like to continue this conversation in a more private setting." John killed the channel. Didn't respond. Just ran. While behind him, he heard the sonic boom of Superman taking to the sky. But the Kryptonian wasn't pursuing, either giving John space to cool down or reporting to whoever this Justice League was. Either way, it bought time. The city was massive, gleaming, impossibly intact for any world that had seen real conflict. The architecture was a strange blend of Art Deco and modernist design, with flying vehicles, actual flying cars, moving through designated air lanes above the streets. Holographic advertisements flickered across building faces. The technology level was inconsistent. Advanced aerospace engineering alongside what looked like conventional internal combustion engines. Patchwork development, uneven progress, or multiple sources of technology, different origins. Alien tech integrated with human infrastructure. His HUD registered a new transmission, different frequency, military-grade encryption, professional protocols. "Master Chief?" The voice was different from Luthor's. Harder, female. Authority that came from battlefield command, not boardrooms. "My name is Amanda Waller. I run a government organization called Task Force X. We handle threats conventional military can't. You just fell through a dimensional rift, rejected both Superman and Lex Luthor, and disappeared into Metropolis's infrastructure within 5 minutes of arrival. That's either extremely competent or extremely dangerous. I'm willing to bet it's both. We need to talk. 3 parties now, 3 offers, 3 different agendas. John kept running, shields at 74%, ammo count unchanged. Tactical situation deteriorating from information vacuum to active recruitment war. He needed a defensible position, needed time to think, needed to figure out what the hell kind of universe he'd landed in, where humans apparently coexisted with beings who could fly and had governments that ran organizations designed to handle threats conventional military can't. The warehouse district loomed ahead, exactly as Luthor had predicted, which meant the man's intelligence network was frighteningly accurate. Old industrial buildings, rust and decay, shadows deep enough to hide in. John picked the largest structure, scanned for entry points, and breached through a side door that collapsed under armored weight. Inside was darkness, old machinery, and silence. Perfect. John moved to the center of the space, taking up a position behind a massive support pillar with sight lines on all 3 entrances. His motion tracker registered nothing. Shields at 81%. He had maybe 10 minutes before someone, Superman, Luthor's people, or this Waller's task force, found him. 10 minutes to decide. Which devil did he trust? Or did he trust none of them and forge his own path in a universe that already had too many gods? His training said gather intelligence. His instinct said trust no one. His experience said the mission always came first. But what was the mission now? Survival, return home, protection of innocent life. For the first time in 30 years, Master Chief John-117 didn't have a clear objective. And somehow, that was more unsettling than any Covenant army he'd ever faced. The warehouse stayed quiet for exactly 8 minutes. John used the time efficiently. He performed a complete diagnostic on his armor. Fusion reactor at 96% efficiency, shield generators functional but still recharging at reduced rate. Motion tracker recalibrated to filter out the bizarre energy signatures this universe seemed to produce naturally. His HUD displayed a comprehensive threat assessment. 3 factions making contact, 0 reliable intelligence, compromised position in hostile urban terrain with unknown response force capabilities. Standard UNSC protocol would be to establish communication with local military command, verify chain of authority, integrate with existing defense infrastructure. But there was no UNSC here. No Admiral Hood, no Fleet Comm, no Infinity providing orbital support. Just him, his armor, Bauso, and whatever wars this universe was already fighting. The 8th minute ended when his motion tracker registered a contact that didn't move like anything he'd encountered before. No footsteps, no engine noise, no thermal bloom from conventional approach. Just a signature that appeared at the warehouse's south entrance as if it had materialized from nothing. Human-sized, bipedal, moving with deliberate precision that spoke of complete environmental awareness. John's rifle came up smooth, targeting reticles centering on the darkness where his sensors said something was standing. Impressive reaction time, a voice said from the shadows. Male, deep, controlled. Most people don't detect me until I want them to. A figure stepped into the dim light, filtering through the warehouse's broken windows. Human. No armor, just a gray and black suit that seemed designed to drink shadows. Cape, another one. But this was tactical, reinforced, more utility than showmanship. And covering his face, a cowl with pointed ears that would have been absurd if not for the presence radiating from the man beneath it. John kept the rifle steady. "You're not Superman." "No," the figure said. "I'm Batman. We need to talk. Batman. The one Luthor had mentioned with obvious disdain. The billionaire who dressed like a rodent. Except standing here in person, there was nothing ridiculous about him. The way he moved, perfect economy of motion, no wasted energy, positioning himself exactly at the optimal distance to react to threat or retreat to cover. Military training, combat experience. This wasn't a costume enthusiast playing hero. This was a soldier who'd chosen different armor. How did you get in? John asked, not lowering the weapon, but not firing either. Threat assessment, dangerous, skilled, but hadn't demonstrated hostile intent yet. The same way you did. Batman's eyes, white lenses in the cowl, no readable expression, swept over John's MJOLNIR armor with analytical precision. Except, I didn't break the door. You're broadcasting dozens of electromagnetic signatures. Your armor's reactor is emitting exotic radiation that doesn't exist naturally on this Earth. And your energy shields leave a distinctive distortion pattern in local space-time. You're not hard to track. John's HUD confirmed it. His armor was indeed broadcasting across multiple spectrums, adaptation protocols trying to interface with local infrastructure that used completely different standards. Operational security nightmare. But he'd been so focused on immediate tactical concerns, he hadn't considered electronic signature management. Mistake. Small one, but in hostile territory. Small mistakes got people killed. You're not with Superman, John said. Statement, not question. I work with him. Sometimes. When our methods align. Batman moved closer. Not aggressive, just closing distance with the confidence of someone who'd calculated every possible outcome. But I'm not here representing the Justice League. I'm here because a dimensional rift tore open over Metropolis, deposited an augmented human soldier in powered armor using technology I can't immediately classify. And within 5 minutes, you identified the 3 most significant power players in this city and rejected all of them. That's not panic. That's training. You analyze threats for a living, John observed. I prepare for them. Batman stopped 10 feet away, just outside optimal melee range, but close enough to communicate without shouting. Which is why I need to understand what you are. Your armor uses a fusion reactor miniaturized beyond anything human science has achieved. Your energy shields operate on principles that violate our current understanding of physics. Your weapons fire kinetic rounds at velocities suggesting electromagnetic acceleration. And according to Superman's analysis, you're not wearing the armor, you're integrated with it. Neural interface, augmentation. You're not a man in a suit, you're a weapon system. Accurate assessment, uncomfortably accurate. This Batman had analyzed his armor's capabilities from observation alone, an extrapolated function from form, identified the core truth. Spartans weren't soldiers who wore armor. They were armor that happened to house human will. If you're trying to determine threat level, John said, I'm not hostile to civilians. I don't know this world, don't know its conflicts. I'm gathering intelligence before making commitments. Smart. Batman's head tilted slightly. But you're also stranded. That rift closed. My equipment registered a dimensional collapse that sealed completely. No residual bridging energy, no anchor points, nothing to reverse engineer. Unless you have technology capable of opening dimensional portals, you're not going home through conventional means. The words hit harder than expected. John had known, logically, that the rift had sealed, had understood he was stranded, but hearing it confirmed by someone with obvious technical expertise made it real in a way combat immediacy hadn't allowed. No way home, no mission parameters, no support structure, completely alone in a universe that already had its own wars. I've survived worse, John said, and meant it. I believe you." Batman's tone shifted slightly, still analytical, but with something almost like respect underneath. "Your psych profile suggests extensive combat trauma, suppressed emotional responses, and hyper-developed tactical cognition. You've been fighting for a long time, probably most of your life. And you're good at it. Good enough that 3 separate factions are already trying to recruit you based on 5 minutes of observation." "You're trying to recruit me too," John noted. "No, I'm trying to understand you." Batman pulled something from his belt, a small device, holographic display activating to show schematics. John's armor, complete technical breakdown, 3D rendering rotating slowly, annotated with analysis points and question marks where Batman couldn't determine function. "I've been scanning you since I arrived. Your armor's incredible. Self-repairing nanomachines in the undersuit, liquid crystal layer for HUD projection, energy shields that regenerate using ambient electromagnetic radiation, neural lace interfacing directly with your spine. This isn't experimental technology. This is refined, combat-tested, which means wherever you're from, you were fighting something that required this level of advancement just to survive." John said nothing. Operational security demanded silence. But Batman wasn't asking questions. He was demonstrating capability, showing John exactly how thoroughly he could be analyzed, how vulnerable his technology was to someone with the right tools and mindset. Intimidation through competence. John recognized the tactic. He'd used it himself. "The Covenant?" Batman said quietly. "You mentioned fighting an alien hegemony that wanted to exterminate your species. 30 years. That's not a war. That's an extinction event. And you survived, which means you're either incredibly lucky, incredibly skilled, or both." "How?" John stopped, analyzed. "You accessed Luthor's transmission, monitored the conversation." "I monitor all of Luthor's transmissions." Batman's tone suggested this was obvious. "He's dangerous. Brilliant, but dangerous. Everything he said to you was true, but incomplete. Yes, LexCorp has advanced laboratories. Yes, they've reverse-engineered alien technology. But Luthor doesn't help people. He uses them. If you accept his offer, you become a data point, a prototype to study, proof that humans can be weapons to rival Superman. He'll help you, right up until you're more valuable as a dissected specimen than an ally." "And Superman?" John asked. "Genuine, idealistic, powerful enough to destroy this planet by accident." Batman's white lenses reflected no light. "He wants to help you, truly. But he doesn't understand threat assessment the way soldiers do. To him, you're a lost person who needs aid. To me, you're an unknown combatant with capabilities that could destabilize global security if deployed incorrectly. Superman sees the best in people. I prepare for the worst." "Which brings us to you," John said. "What do you want?" "Information, honest assessment, and your word that if you stay on this Earth, you won't become a threat." Batman's posture didn't change, but something in his voice hardened. "I've prepared contingencies for every powered being on this planet. Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, all of them. If necessary, I can neutralize any threat. But I'd rather have allies than enemies. So I'm offering you what the others can't. Complete transparency. I won't try to recruit you, won't try to use you, but I will monitor you. And if you demonstrate hostile intent toward innocent life, I will stop you." The honesty was almost startling. No manipulation, no political maneuvering, just direct threat assessment and clear parameters. Batman operated exactly like a UNSC tactical officer. Identify threats, establish protocols, maintain security. John respected that. "I'm not a threat to civilians," John said. "Never have been. But I need resources. Technical support for my armor. Intelligence on this world's conflicts and factions. And I need to understand what pulled me here. Because if it was deliberate, whoever did it might do it again." "Agreed." Batman tapped his holographic display, and new data appeared. Files, reports, images. The energy signature that created the rift matches two known sources: boom tube technology from Apocalypse and exotic radiation consistent with Forerunner artifacts, according to your armor's residual scan data. Someone or something weaponized both. Deliberately created a dimensional bridge. You weren't an accident. You were pulled here. John's threat assessment spiked. Why? Unknown. But Apocalypse is ruled by Darkseid, a new god with conquest ambitions spanning the multiverse. If he's found a way to access other dimensions... Batman's jaw tightened. That changes everything. Before John could respond, his motion tracker registered multiple new contacts. Vehicles approaching fast, military-grade engines, coordinated movement suggesting tactical deployment. His HUD tagged them. 8 vehicles, 4-man teams, heavy weapons loadout. "Waller's task force," Batman said, already moving toward the shadows. "She doesn't ask nicely. You have approximately 90 seconds before they breach and attempt containment." "You're leaving?" John asked. "I'm giving you space to make your own decision." "But Chief..." Batman paused at the warehouse entrance, cowl turning back toward John. "Whatever you choose. Remember, this world already has enough conflicts. Don't add to them unless you're prepared for the consequences." Then he was gone. Literally vanished into darkness like he'd never been there. John was alone again. 85 seconds until contact with a government task force that handled threats conventional military can't. His shields were at 92%, 37 rounds in the rifle, 2 grenades. And a choice: comply with official authority, fight through a containment force, or find a third option. Batman's tactical assessment had implied, but not stated directly. His motion tracker registered the vehicles stopping outside. Doors opening. Professional deployment pattern, perimeter first, entry team second, sniper overwatch from elevated position 200 meters east. Very professional, which meant they were either very good or very desperate. 60 seconds. John made his decision. The entry team breached with flashbangs and textbook precision. John was already gone. He'd moved the moment his motion tracker registered the sniper settling into position. Optical camouflage would have been useful. But MJOLNIR's active camo module had burned out during the dimensional transit. Instead, he used the warehouse's infrastructure. Support beams, catwalks, shadows deep enough that even military-grade night vision would struggle. The Spartan 2 augmentation program had made him superhuman, but the training had made him a ghost. The flashbangs detonated where he'd been standing. Brilliant white light, concussive thunder, tactical distraction while the entry team poured through 3 simultaneous breach points. Professional, coordinated, exactly what John would have done. But they were looking for a target that fought like conventional infantry. John fought like a hunter. He moved along the catwalks 20 feet above the warehouse floor, each step precisely placed to avoid metal stress noise. Below, the entry team spread out in textbook formation. 4-person fire teams overlapping fields of fire, communication via tactical hand signals and subvocal headsets. Military discipline, probably special operations background. These weren't rent-a-cops or local law enforcement. These were operators. Target is not at designated position, the team leader whispered into her comm. Female, late 30s, by voice, calm, experienced. Possible relocation to secondary. John's motion tracker registered another presence entering the warehouse. Different signature, smaller. I'm moving with absolute confidence, despite the tactical chaos. A woman walked through the main entrance like she owned the building. 5'8", heavy-set, dark skin, business suit that cost more than most soldiers' annual salary. But it was her presence that registered as threat. The kind of authority that didn't need weapons, because everyone around her was already armed and absolutely loyal. Amanda Waller. Had to be. "Stand down," she said, not loudly, but every operator in the warehouse froze. "He's not here to kill you. Are you, Master Chief?" John stayed silent, motionless, watching. Waller's eyes swept the warehouse interior with analytical precision and then, impossibly, locked directly onto his position in the shadows 30 feet above her. No night vision, no thermal imaging gear visible, just raw situational awareness that said she'd located threats in worse conditions than this. "I can have my sniper put a .50 caliber round through that support beam you're standing on," Waller said conversationally. "You'd survive the fall, probably, but your shields are at, 94%? A Barrett M82 firing custom armor-piercing rounds at that recharge rate would be inconvenient. So let's skip the posturing and talk like professionals. Threat assessment. Accurate intelligence on his shield capacity. Sniper assets positioned to exploit structural weaknesses. Complete tactical awareness despite no visible sensor equipment. Either she had surveillance tech John's HUD wasn't detecting, or Batman had fed her real-time data. Probably both. John dropped from the catwalk, 20 feet, to easy fall with MJOLNIR's inertial compensation. He landed in a three-point stance that cracked concrete, shields flaring briefly from impact absorption, and stood to face Waller directly. Her expression didn't change, didn't flinch, just studied him the way a general studied battlefield terrain. "Amanda Waller," she said. "Director of Advanced Research Group Uniting Superhumans. We call it Argus. Government organization chartered to handle meta-human threats, alien incursions, magical catastrophes, and anything else conventional military can't manage. Which now includes dimensional refugees in advanced combat armor." "I'm not a threat," John said. "Everyone's a threat, Chief. Question is whether you're a manageable one." Waller gestured, and her operators lowered their weapons, not holstering, just de-escalating. Professional courtesy between combatants. "You've been on this Earth for 26 minutes. In that time, you've rejected Superman's help, ignored Lex Luthor's recruitment pitch, evaded my containment team, and apparently had a conversation with Batman that ended with him leaving you to make your own choices. That's either impressive operational security or dangerous independence. I need to know which." "Both," John said honestly. Waller smiled, thin, without humor. "Good answer. Here's my situation. I run an organization that keeps 7 billion civilians alive in a world where alien gods throw city blocks at each other for fun. Superman's a Boy Scout who thinks everyone deserves a second chance. Batman's a paranoid genius who trusts no one. Luthor's a megalomaniac who thinks human supremacy justifies any atrocity. None of them understand what you are because they've never fought a real war. But I have. Mogadishu, Kandahar, Kahndaq during the Black Atom crisis. I know what a soldier looks like. And you're not just a soldier, you're a weapon. Accurate. Uncomfortably so. The Spartan 2 program had created weapons, not soldiers. Tools to end rebellions, until the Covenant arrived and turned those tools toward species survival. What do you want? John asked. Cooperation, not recruitment, not control, just understanding. Waller pulled out a tablet, swiped through files, turned it to show John. Images, alien ships, meta-human conflicts, magical disasters. This is what I deal with, monthly, sometimes weekly. The Justice League handles the public-facing crises, but there are threats they won't touch. Morally gray situations, preemptive strikes, on black ops that can't have Superman's fingerprints on them. That's where my people come in. Task Force X, John said, remembering her initial transmission, among other programs. Waller's eyes were hard. I'm not offering you a spot on the team. Not yet. You're too unknown, too dangerous. But I am offering you a deal. Work with us on a trial basis. Help us understand your technology. Let us analyze the dimensional rift that brought you here. In exchange, you get access to Argus resources, legal protection, and technical support for your armor. No strings, no bombs implanted in your neck. Just professional courtesy between soldiers. John studied her, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the hidden agenda, found only brutal pragmatism. Waller wasn't trying to inspire him or intimidate him. She was negotiating from a position of mutual need with complete transparency about her methods. It was almost refreshing. What about the Justice League? John asked. Superman seemed to think I should work with them. Superman thinks everyone should work with them. He's an idealist. Doesn't understand that some problems can't be solved by inspiring hope and punching harder. Waller gestured at her operators, who began withdrawing toward the exits, giving John space, demonstrating non-aggression. The League's good at what they do. Public heroism, disaster response, alien invasion repulsion, but they're reactive. They wait for the crisis, then solve it. I prefer prevention, containment, controlled elimination of threats before they become catastrophes. Preemptive strikes, John said. Black ops, assassination. Yes, all of the above. Sometimes. Waller didn't flinch from the accusation. This world has threats that don't respond to Superman's speeches, enemies that exploit his morality. If I need someone killed to save 1 million lives, I make that call. The League doesn't, which is why they handle PR while I handle security. John understood that logic. He'd lived it for 30 years. ONI had operated on the same principles. Section 3 had eliminated threats before they could metastasize. Spartans had been deployed to crush rebellions before they could spread. The moral calculus of acceptable casualties for greater good. He'd never been comfortable with it, but he'd understood the necessity. I'm not an assassin, John said. Didn't ask you to be. Asked you to help us analyze the tech that brought you here. Because if Darkseid, the alien god who rules a planet called Apocalypse, has found a way to pull warriors from other dimensions, then we need to understand how and why, before he pulls through something worse than a lone Spartan. The logic was sound. The threat assessment was valid. And Waller was right about one thing. If someone had deliberately pulled John through dimensions, they could do it again. Could pull through Covenant forces, flood, Forerunner constructs, things this universe wasn't prepared to handle. But accepting Waller's offer meant working for a government organization in a universe where he had zero context for political legitimacy. Argus could be genuinely defensive, or it could be authoritarian control masquerading as security. Without independent verification, he was operating blind. I need time, John said, not to verify, to understand what you're really offering. Fair. You've got 48 hours. Waller gestured at one of her operators, who approached holding a small device. Communications gear, military-grade encryption. Encrypted channel. Direct line to me. You need help, you call. You find information about the rift, you share. After 48 hours, we revisit the conversation. Sound acceptable? John took the device, examined it. Standard communications hardware. no obvious tracking or explosive components. Of course, nanoscale surveillance would be invisible to visual inspection. But if Waller wanted him tracked, she already had the capability. Batman had proven that by locating him in the warehouse. "Acceptable," John said. Waller nodded. Professional courtesy acknowledged. "One more thing. Lex Luthor will try to contact you again, probably through intermediaries, probably with very generous offers. Don't trust him. He sees you as a prototype to reverse engineer, living proof that human augmentation can rival Kryptonian power. He'll use you, then dissect you the moment you're more valuable dead than alive." Noted. "And Superman?" Waller's expression softened infinitesimally. "He's genuine, really does want to help. But he's naive, thinks everyone can be redeemed, doesn't understand that some threats need to be eliminated, not rehabilitated. Work with him if you want, but understand, his morality is a luxury Earth can't always afford." With that, Waller turned and walked toward the exit. Her operators followed in perfect formation, withdrawing from the warehouse with the same professional precision they'd entered with. No threats, no final warnings, just tactical disengagement with mutual understanding. John was alone again, communications device in hand. 48 hours to decide. 3 factions offering 3 different versions of alliance. His motion tracker registered one final contact, approaching from the east, moving fast. Different signature, faster than human. Energy readings that spiked his HUD's threat assessment into amber. Superman landed outside the warehouse with enough force to rattle the building's foundation. "Chief?" The Kryptonian's voice called through the walls. "I know Waller just left. I know Batman talked to you, and I know you're trying to figure out who to trust. But there's something you need to see. Now. Before you make any decisions about this world." John's shields were at 98%. The MA-5D was loaded, and Superman's tone carried something John recognized from every battlefield commander he'd ever served under. Urgency, real threat, immediate crisis. "What is it?" John called back. "The dimensional rift that brought you here? It didn't completely close. There's a residual anchor point, and something's trying to open it from the other side, something that's broadcasting a signal I've never heard before." Superman's silhouette appeared in the warehouse entrance, backlit by afternoon sun. "Batman's analyzing the transmission, but we need your help. Because the signal? It's in your language, military codes, and it's screaming a warning about something called the Flood." Every Spartan instinct John possessed went ice cold. The Flood, here, in a universe unprepared for parasite warfare. "How long until it breaches?" John asked, on already moving. 12 hours, maybe less." "Then we don't have time for politics," John said, weapon ready, mission parameters crystallizing. "You want my help? You've got it. But we do this my way. Full tactical command. No heroic speeches. No second chances for the enemy. The Flood doesn't negotiate. It doesn't surrender. It consumes. And if it gets a foothold in this universe, your entire planet becomes ground zero for extinction." Superman's expression hardened. "Understood. Let's move." John followed the alien god into the sky, carried in arms that could crush steel, and tried not to think about what would happen if the Justice League wasn't ready for what came next. Because the Flood didn't care about power levels. It just cared about biomass. And Earth had 7 billion hosts waiting. The Watchtower hung 7,000 miles above Earth, like a crystal fortress defying gravity. John processed the logistics clinically as Superman carried him through the thermosphere at speeds that would have liquefied an unaugmented human. MJOLNIR's inertial compensation systems screamed warnings as they broke Mach 15, but held. The view was simultaneously familiar and alien. Earth, blue and green and perfect. Except the continents were wrong. Different coastlines, different ice cap formations. Confirmation that this wasn't his universe's Earth, just a dimensional parallel. They docked at a hangar bay that irised open like organic technology, and John's boots hit deck plating that hummed with power signatures his HUD couldn't classify. Advanced, beyond UNSC standards, maybe approaching Forerunner-adjacent engineering, though the aesthetic was completely different. Bright, optimistic, designed by beings who expected the universe to cooperate with their ideals. "This way," Superman said, already moving through corridors that curved in ways architecture shouldn't. "Batman's in the analysis lab with Cyborg. They've been monitoring the rift's residual signature since you arrived." John followed, weapon lowered but ready, taking in everything. The Watchtower was massive, easily comparable to a UNSC cruiser in scale, but built for different purposes. No weapons emplacements visible, no armor plating, just vast transparent sections showing Earth below and the void beyond, as if daring the universe to attack. Hubris, or confidence backed by power John hadn't fully assessed yet. They entered a chamber dominated by holographic displays that would have made Dr. Halsey weep with envy. Three-dimensional data streams, real-time satellite feeds, dimensional analysis charts that used mathematical models John recognized from Forerunner artifacts. And standing before it all, two figures. Batman, still in the cowl, now operating multiple interfaces simultaneously with hands that moved like a concert pianist's. And someone new. Half human, half machine. Literally. The right side was flesh, African-American, young, maybe early 20s. The left side was technology more advanced than anything John had seen outside Forerunner installations. Cybernetic integration so complete, there was no visible seam between organic and synthetic. One eye human, one eye glowing red with active sensor arrays. The cyborg turned. And that red eye swept over John's armor with an intensity that suggested active scanning. "Whoa, your armor's quantum encrypted. I can't penetrate the firewalls without..." He stopped, grinned. "Sorry, Victor Stone, cyborg. I handle the Watchtower's technical systems, and your tech is incredible. Fusion reactor, neural interface, adaptive shielding. Where did you even get miniaturization like that?" "UNSC Research Division," John said. 26th century technology." 26th? Cyborg blinked. "You're from the future?" "Different universe," Batman interjected, without looking up from his displays. "Parallel dimensional timeline. His universe's human development diverged from ours approximately 400 years ago. Faster technological progress, interstellar colonization. He's in contact with hostile alien species that forced rapid military advancement." "The Covenant," John confirmed. "Alien hegemony, religious zealots who believed humans were heretical abominations. They glassed entire planets, killed billions. The war lasted 30 years. The room went quiet. Even the holographic displays seemed to dim slightly. Superman's expression shifted, still compassionate, but now with understanding. "You've been fighting since you were a child." Statement, not question. John didn't confirm or deny, just waited for Batman to get to the point. "The dimensional rift," Batman said, finally turning from his displays. It originated from two simultaneous energy sources. The first was a boom tube, apocalyptic technology that creates traversable wormholes through space-time. Darkseid's signature is all over it. The second source was exotic radiation matching Forerunner portal technology. Someone weaponized both. Deliberately created an intersection point that punched through dimensional barriers. Why? John asked. Unknown. But the result was a controlled extraction. You weren't random collateral damage. You were selected, pulled through with enough precision to minimize dimensional shear and maximize survival probability. Someone wanted you here, alive, functional. John's threat assessment spiked. Who? Working theory? Cyborg pulled up new data, signal analysis, cryptographic patterns, source triangulation. Whoever opened the rift had access to your universe's military communication protocols. They knew your armor's specifications, knew how to create a stable corridor that wouldn't kill you during transit. That's not random chance. That's intelligence, preparation. Someone's been watching your universe, maybe for a long time. Batman's eyes narrowed behind the cowl. And now they're trying to open another one. Same energy signature. Same boom tube Forerunner hybrid. But this time, the transmission is different. Not extraction, invasion. He gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show a signal analysis. Complex waveforms, mathematical patterns, and underlying it all, a message in UNSC military encryption that made John's blood run cold. Containment breach. Installation 07, flood outbreak, parasite warfare protocols enacted, dimensional transit initiated. Warning, do not engage without proper hazmat protocols. Biological contamination imminent. This is not a drill. The flood, Superman said quietly. You reacted like you knew what it was. What are we dealing with, Chief? John stared at the message, processed the implications, ran threat assessment protocols that all returned the same result. Catastrophic. The flood is a parasite, he said, voice flat, clinical. Ancient, older than human civilization, possibly older than this galaxy. It infects sentient life, rewrites biological code, converts hosts into combat forms. One infection spreads exponentially. 10 infected become 100, 100 become 1,000. It doesn't stop, doesn't negotiate, doesn't need resources or logistics. It just consumes. Like a zombie virus? Cyborg asked. Worse, zombies are mindless. The flood is intelligent, gets smarter with every host it absorbs. Enough biomass, it forms a grave mind, centralized intelligence that can coordinate millions of combat forms simultaneously. On a strategic thinking, tactical adaptation, and if it reaches critical mass, John paused. It can manipulate slip space, create its own dimensional portals, spread to other star systems, other dimensions. The silence in the lab was absolute. How do you kill it? Batman asked. Fire, extreme heat, total biomass destruction. Or you starve it, deny it hosts until the infection burns out. The Forerunners built containment facilities, installations designed to study the flood and find a cure. Installation 07 was one of them. John gestured at the signal. If there's a containment breach, it means the flood escaped. And if it's using Forerunner portal technology to access dimensional corridors, it's looking for new feeding grounds, Superman finished, horror dawning in his expression. In new universes to infect. And someone opened a door, Batman said, deliberately, created a bridge between your universe and ours. The question is why? Accident? Sabotage? Or does someone in this universe want the flood here? John's mind raced through tactical scenarios. All of them ended badly. The flood in a universe with 7 billion uninfected hosts. Metahumans whose enhanced biology would create super soldier combat forms. Kryptonians, Amazons, Atlanteans. Every enhanced individual was a force multiplier for parasite adaptation. We need to close the rift, John said, permanently, before anything comes through. Agreed, Batman said. But we have a problem. The rift is anchored to your armor's quantum signature. You're the dimensional bridge. As long as you're in this universe, the Flood can use you as a homing beacon. John processed that. So either we close the rift and I lose any chance of returning home, or we risk global extinction. There might be a third option. Cyborg was typing furiously, data streams cascading across holographic displays. If we can isolate the rift's anchor point, create a contained dimensional pocket, we could theoretically allow controlled transit while preventing mass invasion. Like an airlock between universes. Anything trying to come through gets quarantined in null space until we can verify it's not hostile. How long to build it? Superman asked. With STAR lab support, maybe 8 hours. But we'd need exotic materials. Nth metal for dimensional stabilization, kryptonite for energy regulation. Kryptonite? John interrupted. Superman's jaw tightened. Radioactive mineral from my home planet. Weakens me, poisons Kryptonians. But it has unique properties for energy manipulation. LexCorp has the largest private kryptonite stockpile on Earth, Batman said. But Luthor won't cooperate without leverage. I'll handle Luthor, Superman said firmly. Chief, I need you to work with Cyborg. Give him everything you know about Forerunner portal technology. Anything that might help us contain this. John nodded. Mission parameters were clear. Threat was identified. He had allies, temporary, conditional, but functional. One question, John said. You mentioned Darkseid. His technology was used to create the rift. Does he know about the Flood? Batman and Superman exchanged glances. Something passed between them. Shared knowledge, grim understanding. Darkseid seeks ultimate power, Batman said. Yet the anti-life equation, a mathematical proof that eliminates free will, allows total control of sentient life. If he discovered an organism that already controls and converts biological matter, he'd see it as a tool, John finished. Not a threat, a weapon. Exactly. The implications were staggering. Darkseid deliberately opening a rift to pull through Flood biomass, using it as a biological weapon against Earth, against the Justice League, against anyone who opposed his conquest. Then we're fighting two wars, John said. The Flood, and whoever's trying to weaponize it. Welcome to Earth, Superman said. But there was no humor in it. Just grim resolve. Let's get to work. John moved to the holographic displays, already analyzing Forerunner portal schematics from memory, and translating alien mathematics into something Cyborg's systems could parse. The young man's cybernetic intelligence was staggering. He processed data faster than any UNSC AI John had worked with. Intuiting connections John would have needed Cortana to calculate. For 3 hours, they worked, building theoretical models, stress-testing dimensional mathematics, designing a containment protocol that could cage a rift between universes. And all the while, John's motion tracker registered the countdown. 9 hours until potential breach. 9 hours to save a universe that wasn't his from a threat that had already consumed galaxies. He'd faced worse odds, but never alone. Never without the UNSC, without other Spartans, without Cortana's analytical support, just him, an alien god, a paranoid detective, and a cyborg teenager trying to build a dimensional cage using mathematics that shouldn't exist. It would have to be enough. Because the alternative was watching another world burn. And John had seen enough worlds die. LexCorp Tower dominated Metropolis's skyline like a steel and glass monument to human ambition. John studied it through the dropship's viewport as they descended. Cyborg piloting, Superman flying escort, Batman monitoring comm channels for Luthor's inevitable countermoves. The building was a masterpiece of architectural intimidation. 80 stories of reflective surfaces and sharp angles, topped with a helipad and what looked like anti-aircraft emplacements disguised as modern art installations. Paranoid. Prepared. Exactly what John would have designed if he expected Superman to attack at any moment. "Luthor knows we're coming," Batman said through the encrypted channel. "He's had surveillance on the Watchtower since we left. Probably analyzed our flight path, extrapolated our needs. Who's prepared a negotiating position that maximizes his advantage." "Let him," Superman replied, voice tight. "We need that kryptonite. He can posture all he wants, but we're not leaving without it." John checked his shields. 100% finally, after Cyborg had recalibrated the recharge algorithms to match this universe's electromagnetic spectrum. The MA-5D was loaded with a fresh magazine Cyborg had fabricated using the Watchtower's matter compiler, molecularly identical to UNSC ammunition. 2 plasma grenades salvaged from his armor's emergency stores. Combat ready. Though if negotiations broke down into firefight inside a civilian building, the mission was already lost. The dropship, sleek Javelin-class transport, touched down on LexCorp's helipad with barely a whisper. The rooftop access was already open, the security personnel flanking the entrance in tactical formation. Not pointing weapons, not aggressive, just present. Professional security detail that knew exactly how dangerous their visitors were. A woman approached as the hatch opened. 5'9", red hair pulled back in severe bun, business suit that somehow managed to look combat ready. Her eyes swept over John's armor with analytical precision, lingered on the UNSC insignia, then settled on his visor with absolute confidence. "Master Chief," she said. "Mercy Graves, Mr. Luthor's executive assistant. He's expecting you. This way, please." No small talk, no pleasantries. Just efficient corporate professionalism that reminded John of O&I briefing officers. People who understood that time was a resource not to be wasted. And they followed her through corridors of polished marble and abstract art that probably cost more than a UNSC frigate. Security was omnipresent, but subtle. Cameras in every corner, biometric scanners disguised as decorative panels, pressure sensors in the floor tiles. Batman had been right. Luthor was prepared for Superman's arrival, which meant prepared for superhuman assault. The executive suite occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Metropolis stretching to the horizon. And standing before them, hands clasped behind his back like a general surveying conquered territory, was Lex Luthor. Shorter than John expected, maybe 5'10", bald, expensive suit. But it was the presence that registered as threat, the kind of absolute confidence that came from knowing you were the smartest person in any room and having the resources to prove it. "Superman," Luthor said without turning. "Batman, the mysterious cyborg, and our dimensional refugee." He turned then, eyes settling on John with predatory interest. "Master Chief Petty Officer John-117, Spartan 2 super soldier. MJOLNIR Mark 6 powered assault armor with regenerating energy shields. Neural interface. Genetic and surgical augmentation begun at age 6. 30 years combat experience against alien hegemony. Survivor of Installation 04's destruction, the Battle of Earth, and at least 17 classified operations that killed everyone else involved. You're not just a soldier. You're humanity's last desperate gamble to survive extinction. And it worked. The dossier was disturbingly accurate. More detailed than anything Batman or Waller should have had access to in 12 hours. Which meant Luthor had been analyzing data from the dimensional rift itself, extrapolating John's history from armor telemetry and quantum signature residue. Brilliant, invasive, dangerous. "You've done your homework," John said. "I always do." Luthor moved to his desk. Minimalist design, just a surface and holographic displays that activated at his approach. "You're here for kryptonite. Specifically, refined isotopes capable of dimensional stabilization when combined with nth metal and exotic matter. You need approximately 40 kilograms to construct a containment field around the dimensional anchor point currently tethered to your armor's quantum signature. And you need it in the next 6 hours, or Earth faces biological contamination from a parasite species that converts sentient life into combat forms." Superman's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about the flood?" "Because I've been monitoring the rift since it opened." Luthor gestured, and holographic displays materialized. Data streams, dimensional analysis, signal intercepts. The same warning message John had seen in the Watchtower, but with additional layers of analysis. The moment an exotic energy signature punched through dimensional barriers over Metropolis, I began analysis. The Forerunner technology component was fascinating. Mathematics suggesting a civilization that mastered dimensional engineering. But the biological warning? That was concerning. So I did research. He pulled up new files, schematics that looked disturbingly like flood combat forms. Biomechanical analysis, infection vectors, tactical assessments. "You reverse-engineered flood biology from a warning signal?" Batman's voice was dangerously quiet. "I extrapolated based on available data. The warning mentioned parasite warfare, biological contamination, exponential spread. Basic epidemiological modeling combined with dimensional energy signatures gave me enough to build theoretical models." Luthor's smile was cold. "And what I found was remarkable. A parasitic organism that adapts and evolves with every host, that gains intelligence geometrically rather than linearly, that can, at sufficient biomass, manipulate dimensional fabric. From a purely scientific perspective, it's the most elegant biological weapon ever conceived." "It's not a weapon," John said flatly. "It's extinction. Semantics. One person's extinction is another's evolution." Luthor waved dismissively. "But that's irrelevant to our negotiation. You need kryptonite. I have kryptonite. The question is, what do I get in exchange?" Superman stepped forward, fists clenched. "You get to live on a planet that isn't consumed by parasites. That's what you get, Lex." "Ah, yes, the moral argument. Help us or everyone dies." "Very compelling. Except I have contingency protocols for flood infection, orbital platforms with high-energy weapons capable of sterilizing infected zones, underground bunkers with 5 years of supplies, cryo-storage facilities for genetic preservation. If the flood breaches containment, I survive. The question is whether everyone else does." "You'd let billions die," Cyborg said, disbelief in his voice. "To prove a point?" "I'd let billions die to prove that humanity doesn't need alien saviors." Luthor's eyes locked on Superman. "Every time you save the day, you make humanity weaker, more dependent, more willing to wait for miracles instead of building their own solutions. The Master Chief understands this. His universe didn't have a Superman, just humans fighting for survival. And they won. Through technology, through augmentation, through sheer bloody determination. That's the future I want for Earth. Not this pathetic dependence on Kryptonian charity." John understood the ideology, had heard variations of it throughout the insurrection. Colonists who resented Earth's control and who wanted humanity to forge its own path without central authority. The arguments had merit. Self-determination, independence. the right to fail or succeed on your own terms. But ideology was a luxury when the flood was involved. "You're not wrong about self-reliance," John said, drawing everyone's attention. "My universe proved humans can survive without alien help. But we also learned that survival requires cooperation, setting aside differences when faced with extinction. The Covenant wanted to exterminate us. The flood wanted to consume us. We survived because we fought together, not because we were divided by philosophy." Luthor studied him. "You're trying to appeal to my pragmatism, suggesting that even I should set aside ideology for species survival. Yes? Interesting." Luthor returned to his desk, fingers steepling in thought. "And what happens after? Once you've built your dimensional containment field and prevented the flood invasion, does Superman return to playing God? Does humanity return to complacency? Or do we learn something from your example?" "That's not my decision," John said. "I'm just trying to prevent extinction." "Exactly. You're a soldier. You follow orders, complete missions. But you don't think about the strategic implications." Luthor pulled up new displays. John's armor schematics, genetic augmentation profiles, neural interface designs. "Your existence proves that humans can be enhanced to rival meta-human capabilities. Your armor demonstrates fusion power miniaturization beyond anything we've achieved. Your combat record shows that proper training and technology can defeat enemies far stronger than baseline human capability. You're not just a soldier, Chief. You're a blueprint, proof of concept for humanity's next evolutionary step." John saw where this was going. "You want my armor, my augmentation protocols, UNSC technology. I want humanity to stop being victims waiting for Superman to save them. Yes." Luthor's expression hardened. "So here's my offer. I give you the kryptonite. You save Earth from the flood. In exchange, you work with LexCorp scientists to develop human enhancement programs based on your augmentation protocols. Not to create weapons, to create equals. Humans who can stand beside Superman instead of cowering behind him." "Absolutely not," Superman said. "Lex, you'd weaponize that technology. Create super soldiers to attack me. Why do you assume it's about attacking you?" Luthor snapped. "Maybe it's about not needing you. Maybe it's about humanity having the capability to defend itself when you're off-world fighting Darkseid or busy saving Lois Lane from whatever contrived death trap she's fallen into this week. The Master Chief's universe didn't have Kryptonians. They built Spartans. We have Kryptonians. We built dependence. I want to fix that." The argument had merit. John had to admit it. Earth's dependence on Superman was strategically unsound. Single point of failure, no redundancy, catastrophic vulnerability if the Kryptonian was compromised or killed. UNSC doctrine would never allow that kind of tactical exposure. But he also understood what Spartans had cost. The children conscripted, the surgical augmentations that killed half the candidates, the psychological conditioning that turned them into weapons instead of people. Dr. Halsey had created miracles. She'd also created monsters. And Luthor would do worse. John could see it in his eyes. The man didn't just want to enhance humanity. He wanted to control it, to prove his superiority through designed evolution. "My answer is no," John said. "The Spartan program cost too much, broke too many people. I won't help you repeat those mistakes here." Luthor's expression didn't change, but something cold settled in his eyes. "Then you won't get your kryptonite. Simple economics. No trade, no cooperation. The flood breaches, you fight it without dimensional containment, and we see who survives." Batman moved then, not aggressive, just repositioning with predatory grace. "You're bluffing, Lex. If the flood establishes foothold on Earth, your contingencies fail. Parasitic infection spreads exponentially. Your bunkers become tombs. Your orbital platforms run out of ammunition. You die like everyone else. Perhaps. Or perhaps I've already prepared countermeasures you haven't considered. Luthor smiled. Did you know that kryptonite radiation inhibits cellular regeneration? That flood infection requires active biological conversion? Sufficiently high kryptonite exposure might actually prevent parasite bonding. I've already begun production of kryptonite-laced munitions, atmospheric dispersal systems, fail-safes that would make Earth uninhabitable for Kryptonians, but survivable for baseline humans and lethal to biological parasites. The silence was absolute. Superman's face had gone pale, like you'd poison the entire planet. Make it so I can't save you. Yes, that's the point. Luthor leaned back. I don't need you, Superman. Never have. I'm offering Chief a trade because it's more efficient than Plan B. But make no mistake, I have a Plan B. Do you? John's threat assessment crystallized. Luthor was serious. Would actually weaponize kryptonite globally, sacrifice the planet's habitability for Superman, gamble on anti-flood effectiveness, all to prove his ideology correct. Brilliant, insane, unacceptable. But they needed that kryptonite. 48 hours, John said suddenly. Everyone turned to him. Give us the kryptonite now. After we contain the flood threat, I'll spend 48 hours consulting with your scientists. Answer questions about Spartan augmentation theory. Nothing classified, nothing operational. Just general principles. Then I'm done. No ongoing partnership, no tech transfer, just consultation. Take it or leave it. Luthor studied him, calculating, weighing the offer against his ideology and pragmatism. 72 hours, he countered. And you provide full armor diagnostic data. 60 hours. No diagnostic data, but I'll demonstrate armor capabilities in controlled environment. Deal. Luthor extended his hand. John looked at that hand, at the man offering partnership with extinction, at the choice between principles and survival. He shook. Mercy will have the kryptonite delivered to your dimensional containment site within the hour, Luthor said. Don't disappoint me, Chief. I'm betting on you to prove that humanity's future doesn't need gods, just well-armed humans with the will to survive. As they left LexCorp Tower, Superman silent and furious beside him, John wondered if he'd just made a deal with something worse than the flood. At least parasites were honest about consuming you. The dimensional containment site was a crater in the New Mexico desert, where the rift's anchor point had manifested most strongly. STAR Labs had established a perimeter within 6 hours. Modular structures, sensor arrays, and enough scientific equipment to analyze a supernova. Dr. Silas Stone, Cyborg's father, led the research team with the kind of focused intensity John recognized from Dr. Halsey. The same single-minded determination to solve impossible problems through sheer intellectual force. John stood at the crater's edge, studying the space where reality was thinnest. His HUD-registered exotic radiation bleeding through from the other side. Forerunner portal energy signatures mixing with boom tube dimensional physics. The mathematics were wrong, incompatible, but like trying to force slip-space coordinates into normal space navigation. But somehow, someone had made it work. Kryptonite delivery incoming, Cyborg announced from his position at the main sensor array. Luthor's transport is 3 minutes out. Also, Dad wants to talk to you about the containment field's resonance frequency. Your armor's quantum signature keeps fluctuating. John crossed the camp to where Dr. Stone was studying holographic projections of dimensional mathematics that looked like Forerunner glyphs translated through human understanding. The older man looked exhausted, gray hair disheveled, lab coat stained with coffee. But his eyes were sharp with the kind of clarity that came from breakthrough thinking. "Master Chief," Dr. Stone said without preamble, "your armor's quantum signature isn't stable. It oscillates between dimensional frequencies like it's trying to maintain connection with your home universe. That's brilliant engineering, probably prevents complete dimensional isolation. But it's also why the Flood can use you as a beacon. We need to dampen that oscillation or the containment field won't hold." "Dampen it how?" John asked. "Temporarily phase shift your armor out of quantum entanglement with your home dimension. Basically, convince it that this universe is home. The shift would last maybe 12 hours before your armor's system's corrected, but that gives us a window to seal the rift permanently." "What are the risks?" Dr. Stone hesitated. "If we sever your quantum connection to your home universe, even temporarily, and something goes wrong with the containment field, you might not be able to re-establish that connection, ever. You'd be permanently stranded here." John processed that. The risk was acceptable. If the Flood breached, being stranded was irrelevant. Everyone would be dead or converted. But if the containment worked and he lost his only link home— "Do it," he said. Dr. Stone nodded with something like respect. "Victor, prep the quantum dampening field. We'll initiate once the kryptonite arrives." And the proximity alarms screamed. Not the calm scientific alerts, full combat klaxons. John's motion tracker lit up with contacts appearing at the crater's perimeter, dozens of them, moving fast, coordinated assault pattern. "We've got incoming," someone shouted from the sensor station. Multiple bogies, unknown configuration, they just appeared out of— The air tore open, boom tubes. Not the massive portals John had read about in Batman's briefing files, but smaller, tactical-sized apertures that spat out armored figures in groups of 4. The armor was blocky, technological, gray and red, with glowing energy cores. And carrying weapons that hummed with power, John's HUD identified as plasma-based energy projectors. Parademons. Darkseid's shock troops, 20, 40, 60 contacts, still appearing. Standard invasion pattern, establish perimeter, suppress defenders, secure objective. The objective being the dimensional rift. "Defensive positions," John barked, already moving. His shields flared as plasma bolts scorched the air where he'd been standing. The MA-5D came up smooth, targeting reticle tracking the nearest parademon, and he fired controlled bursts that punched through armor plating with kinetic force these creatures clearly weren't designed to handle. 3-round center mass. The parademon went down, but 40 more were already advancing. STAR lab security returned fire with conventional weapons, useless against apocalyptian armor. Scientists scattered for cover. Dr. Stone was shouting orders to evacuate non-essential personnel. Cyborg's arm transformed into a sonic cannon that dropped 2 parademons with concentrated sound waves. And then Superman arrived like a meteor. The Kryptonian hit the parademon line at supersonic speed, scattering bodies like ragdolls. His heat vision carved through armor. His fists moved faster than John's HUD could track. 10 parademons down in as many seconds. But more kept coming. The boom tubes weren't closing. They're after the rift. Batman's voice crackled through the comm. He was overhead in some kind of stealth aircraft, tactical analysis scrolling across shared displays. Darkseid wants the dimensional bridge intact. He's not trying to destroy it, he's trying to control it. Which meant this wasn't just an attack. It was a salvage operation. John's threat assessment recalculated. The parademons weren't targeting personnel. They were establishing a perimeter around the crater, setting up equipment that looked disturbingly like Forerunner technology fused with apocalyptian engineering. Dimensional anchors, stabilizers. They were trying to reopen the rift permanently. "Cyborg," John called out. "Can you disrupt their equipment?" "On it." The young man's cybernetic systems interfaced with the parademon tech, in digital warfare at speeds John couldn't follow. "They're using some kind of... Wait, this is Forerunner code. How do they have Forerunner code?" Because Darkseid had been studying the rift, analyzing the Forerunner component, reverse engineering dimensional technology from a civilization millions of years more advanced than his own. A new boom tube opened, larger, and what stepped through made John's combat instincts scream warnings. Kalibak had to be. The briefing files had mentioned Darkseid's son, 8 feet tall, built like a tank, carrying a weapon called the Beta Club that could shatter mountains. The creature was a nightmare of muscle and rage, armor crackling with energy that made the air shimmer. Superman intercepted him before he reached the crater. The impact of their collision created a shockwave that flattened tents and shattered sensor equipment. They traded blows that would have destroyed tanks, moving so fast they blurred. But Superman was holding back, trying not to kill, trying to incapacitate. Kalibak had no such restraint. John analyzed the tactical situation with cold clarity. 60 parademons, multiple boom tubes still active, heavy assault combatant engaging Superman, dimensional equipment being installed around the crater. They were losing ground, needed force multiplication. His hand went to the plasma grenades at his belt. Covenant technology, extremely effective against energy shielding and massed infantry. He primed both, threw with Spartan-enhanced strength and precision. The grenades arced through the air, landed directly in the cluster of parademon engineers installing dimensional anchors. Blue-white plasma detonated with heat that rivaled stellar cores. 20 parademons vaporized instantly. The dimensional equipment melted into slag. Kalibak roared, disengaged from Superman, turned toward John with recognition that something had just disrupted his mission. "That was a mistake, tiny warrior," the giant rumbled, Beta Club crackling with energy. John ejected his empty magazine, slammed a fresh one home, and said nothing. Just calculated firing solutions for joints and weak points in apocalyptian armor. Kalibak charged. John dodged, barely. MJOLNIR's enhanced reflexes turning what should have been a killing blow into a glancing impact that still depleted his shields by 40%. The Beta Club cratered concrete where he'd been standing. And John rolled, came up firing, 3 round bursts targeting Kalibak's knee joints. The rounds bounced off armor. Wrong approach. This wasn't Covenant engineering. This was new god metallurgy. Kinetic weapons were ineffective. Kalibak swung again. John ducked under the blow, drove his armored fist into the giant's ribs with enough force to crack normal bone. Kalibak didn't even flinch, just backhanded John with casual contempt. The impact sent him flying 20 feet. He hit the ground hard, shields collapsing, armor's damage control systems screaming warnings. His HUD displayed critical alerts. Shield generators damaged, recharge offline for 30 seconds, structural integrity at 72%. Kalibak advanced, raised the Beta Club for a finishing blow. Superman tackled him from the side. They crashed through STAR Labs equipment, trading blows that lit up the desert like artillery strikes. Cyborg provided supporting fire with energy weapons that actually seemed to hurt Kalibak. Batman's aircraft strafed the remaining parademons with weapons John couldn't identify but were brutally effective. And John's shields were still offline. 30 seconds felt like an eternity. He used the time to analyze. Kalibak was stronger than him, more durable. His weapons were superior. Direct confrontation was suicide. But the parademons were still installing equipment, still trying to stabilize the rift. That was the real objective. John's motion tracker registered new contacts approaching from the south. Fast. Multiple vehicles. Luthor's transport convoy, right on schedule. 40 kilograms of refined kryptonite arriving in the middle of an active war zone. The transport touched down 200 meters from the crater, and Mercy Graves emerged with a security detail that immediately engaged the parademons. Professional, coordinated, using weapons that fired green-tinged energy rounds that actually penetrated apocalyptian armor. Kryptonite-laced ammunition. Luthor had been serious about his countermeasures. "Delivery confirmed," Mercy called out over the chaos. "Where do you want this, Chief?" John's shields flickered back online. 20%. Climbing. "Cyborg, can you use the kryptonite to disrupt their dimensional anchors?" "Maybe, if I can." Cyborg's eyes widened. "Chief, the rift's energy signature just spiked. Something's trying to push through from the other side. Now!" The air above the crater split open with a sound like reality screaming. The rift tore wider than before, the unstable, crackling with forerunner energy and something else. Something organic. Something that smelled like rot and desperation. And through the gap, John saw them. Flood combat forms, dozens. Twisted amalgamations of human and Covenant physiology, shambling with horrible purpose. Behind them, infection forms. Small, skittering horrors designed to convert living flesh. The dimensional barrier was failing. "Everyone back," John shouted. "Do not let those things touch you. One infection spreads exponentially." But the parademons didn't understand. They saw new enemies and engaged with typical apocalyptian aggression. 3 of them charged the emerging flood forms. The infection forms leaped. John watched in horror as apocalyptian warriors, beings engineered for conquest, became hosts in seconds. Their armor cracked. Biology rewrote itself. And where 3 parademons had stood, 3 new combat forms rose, stronger, faster, more dangerous. Because the flood didn't just infect, it improved, and it had just gained apocalyptian genetics. "New plan," Superman called out, horror in his voice. "We seal the rift now. Cyborg." Already on it. The young man was interfacing with every system simultaneously, using the kryptonite shipment to create an improvised containment field, mathematical calculations too complex for baseline human consciousness. "I need 60 seconds. 60 seconds while flood-infected parademons advanced on terrified scientists. 60 seconds while Kalibak stared at his transformed soldiers with something that might have been fear. 60 seconds while reality bled infection into a universe unprepared for parasite warfare. John had faced worse. He'd just never faced it without other Spartans. "Batman," he called out. "I need fire support on those combat forms. High explosive, incendiary, anything that causes thermal damage." Acknowledged. The stealth aircraft's weapons shifted configuration. Missiles screamed downward, impacting flood biomass with white phosphorus payloads that burned at temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees. The combat forms burned, but infection forms kept coming. 45 seconds. John advanced on the rift, firing controlled bursts at infection forms mid-leap. His accuracy was perfect, each round destroying a parasite before it could reach human hosts. But there were too many. The rift was vomiting them out faster than he could kill them. 30 seconds. Mercy and her security team formed a defensive line, the kryptonite weapons proving unexpectedly effective against flood biomass. The radiation disrupted cellular regeneration exactly as Luthor had theorized. Combat forms withered. Infection forms burst. Luthor had accidentally created the perfect anti-flood weapon. 15 seconds. The rift screamed. Something massive was pushing through, too large for combat form, too organized for mindless parasite. John's HUD-registered biomass approaching 2 tons, coordinated movement, directed intelligence. A proto-grave mind, early-stage hive intelligence. If that thing entered this universe, the war was already lost. "Cyborg!" John roared. "Close it now!" Almost got it. The containment field snapped into existence. Kryptonite radiation flooded the dimensional anchor point. Exotic mathematics rewrote the rules of local space-time, and the rift screamed one final time and collapsed. The proto-gravemind's appendage, halfway through the barrier, severed cleanly. The biomass fell to desert sand and began dissolving, cellular structure unable to maintain coherence without dimensional connection. Silence. The remaining flood combat forms, cut off from hive intelligence, became sluggish, uncoordinated. Easy targets. Superman's heat vision carved through them. Batman's incendiaries reduced them to ash. John's rifle finished the rest. Within 90 seconds, the desert was clear. Smoking, scorched, but clear. The rift was sealed. The flood was contained. And Earth had survived by approximately 15 seconds. John's shields were at 48%. His armor's damage control systems reported 17 minor breaches, 3 significant structural compromises, causing complete depletion of plasma grenades. But he was alive. Earth was alive. The mission was complete. Kalibak, watching the sealed rift with something between rage and calculation, opened a boom tube and retreated. The surviving parademons followed. They'd be back. Darkseid didn't give up easily. But for now, Earth had won. Dr. Stone approached John, looking shell-shocked. "We did it. The containment field is stable. The rift is permanently sealed. You can't go home now. The quantum connection is severed completely." John nodded. He'd known the price. "Then I guess Earth is home now," he said, and tried not to think about Cortana, trapped somewhere in the dimensional collapse. About Installation 07, about the UNSC, still fighting wars he'd never see again. He was a Spartan. Spartans adapted, even when it hurt. The Watchtower's medical bay was quiet, sterile, and filled with technology that would have seemed magical to UNSC field medics. John sat on an examination table designed for Superman's physiology. Reinforced, oversized, capable of withstanding Kryptonian strength. His MJOLNIR armor was in pieces across 3 workstations where Cyborg and Dr. Stone were performing damage assessment and repairs. Without the armor, John looked smaller. Still massive by baseline human standards. 6'10" of enhanced muscle and reinforced skeletal structure, but vulnerable in ways the armor concealed. The scars told stories. Plasma burns from Covenant engagements, surgical marks from augmentation procedures, a particularly nasty one across his ribs from a hunter's fuel rod blast on Reach. 30 years of war written in scar tissue and reinforced bone. "Your healing factor is remarkable," Dr. Stone said, running a medical scanner over John's torso. Broken ribs from Kalibak's strike are already knitting. Soft tissue damage is regenerating at approximately 4 times baseline human rate. The augmentations weren't just combat enhancement, they were survival engineering. "Had to be," John said quietly. Spartans were deployed against enemies that could kill normal humans just by existing in the same space. Covenant elites were 7 feet tall, 3 times stronger than unaugmented humans. Hunters were walking tanks. We needed every advantage just to survive first contact. Batman stood in the corner, cowl pulled back to reveal Bruce Wayne's face for the first time. Square-jawed, weathered, eyes that had seen too much. He'd been silent since returning from the desert, analyzing combat footage, running tactical assessments. You fought 3 flood-infected parademons simultaneously while your shields were down, Batman said finally. No backup, no heavy weapons, just rifle fire and hand-to-hand combat against biomass enhanced with apocalyptian genetics. You should be dead. Spartans don't die, John said automatically. Then caught himself. That's what we're told, what we believe. But it's not true. Spartans die all the time. We just don't quit first. Superman entered the medical bay carrying a tray of food, actual food, not the nutrition paste UNSC rations usually provided. Thought you might be hungry. You haven't eaten in 18 hours. John accepted the tray. Real eggs, bacon, toast, coffee that smelled like pre-war Earth, back when humanity could afford luxuries like flavor. He ate methodically, refueling the biological machine that was a Spartan's body. What happens now? Superman asked, settling into a chair with careful deliberation. You're stuck here. The dimensional rift is sealed. No way home. No UNSC. No mission parameters. What does a soldier do when the war ends? Find a new war, John said. Statement, not question. That's what I'm afraid of. Batman's voice carried weight. You're a weapon looking for a target? Earth has plenty of conflicts, plenty of people who'd love to aim you at their enemies. Waller's already submitted a formal recruitment proposal. Luthor's expecting you to honor your consultation agreement. And Darkseid. He pulled up holographic footage from the desert battle. Darkseid now knows Earth has access to a Spartan 2 super soldier and successfully repelled a flood incursion. And that makes you strategically valuable. He'll be back. John understood the implications. He'd gone from dimensional refugee to tactical asset in less than 24 hours. Every faction would want to recruit, study, or eliminate him. Standard asymmetric warfare. When you can't match the enemy's capability, you acquire it, neutralize it, or destroy it. I need to understand this world better, John said. Its conflicts, its factions, what wars it's already fighting. I've been reacting since I arrived. That ends now. I need intelligence, context, strategic assessment. Agreed, Batman said. Which is why I'm offering you something different than recruitment. Information, full access to my tactical database, every conflict on Earth, every metahuman threat, every ongoing war, cold or hot. No strings, no obligations. It's just the data you need to make informed decisions about where you stand. Superman's eyes narrowed. Bruce, that database contains classified information, government secrets, intelligence that could help him avoid being manipulated by people who don't have Earth's best interests at heart. Batman interrupted. Chief isn't a politician or an ideologue. He's a soldier who's been fighting for human survival since he was 6 years old. I trust his tactical judgment more than I trust Waller's bureaucracy or Luthor's megalomania. The vote of confidence was unexpected. John studied Batman, Bruce Wayne, and saw something familiar. Another person shaped by war, another weapon forged from trauma and necessity. They weren't the same, but they understood each other. I accept, John said. Batman nodded, pulled up a holographic interface. This will take time. The database is extensive, but I'll give you the priority briefing. Earth's current strategic situation. The hologram shifted to show a world map with conflict zones highlighted in red. Dozens of them. Some obvious, war-torn regions, failed states, terrorist organizations. Others less clear, metahuman incidents, alien incursions, magical catastrophes. Earth's primary threats fall into 6 categories, Batman began. First, apocalypse. Darkseid seeks the anti-life equation and won't stop until he conquers or destroys us. He's attempted invasion 4 times in the past 3 years. We've repelled him, but he's learning, adapting. The parademon assault you just faced was reconnaissance. He's probing our defenses, testing new tactics. How do you stop him? John asked. We don't. Not permanently. We contain. Delay. Make invasion too costly to be worth the effort. Darkseid fights on multiple fronts across the multiverse. Earth is one theater among thousands. Our goal is to be the theater that's more trouble than it's worth. John nodded. Familiar strategy. The UNSC had done the same against the Covenant, made every planet costly enough that the enemy had to commit disproportionate resources. Second category, Lex Luthor. He's brilliant, wealthy, and convinced that Superman represents an existential threat to human autonomy. He's not entirely wrong. Superman could conquer Earth if he chose. The fact that he doesn't is based purely on personal morality, not structural constraint. Luthor wants to create systemic defenses against metahuman power. Unfortunately, his methods include human experimentation, weapons proliferation, and occasional crimes against humanity. Is he a threat or an asset? John asked. Both. He's capable of genuine innovation that saves lives. He's also capable of mass murder to prove a point. You made a deal with him, 60 hours of consultation. Honor that agreement. But understand, everything you tell him becomes a weapon. He'll use your augmentation data to create super soldiers, your combat tactics to train anti-metahuman strike teams, your technology to build weapons designed to kill Superman. And that's acceptable to you? John looked at Superman, who'd gone very still. No, the Kryptonian said quietly. But I can't stop Lex from innovating. Can't arrest him for thought crimes. As long as he doesn't cross legal lines, I have to accept that he's preparing to kill me. It's complicated. John thought about ONI, Section 3, and the morally gray operations conducted in humanity's defense. Assassination, sabotage, information warfare. All technically illegal, but strategically necessary. Luthor operated in that same space. Necessary evil or actual evil, depending on perspective. Third category, Batman continued. Amanda Waller and Argus. Government organization with legitimate mandate to handle metahuman threats. Waller's competent, pragmatic, and absolutely ruthless when she determines it's necessary. Her Task Force X, also called the Suicide Squad, uses imprisoned supervillains for Black Ops missions. Explosive implants ensure compliance. High casualty rate. Morally questionable, but strategically effective. You don't approve, John observed. I don't approve of slavery, even when the slaves are murderers, Batman said flatly. But Waller gets results. She's prevented 3 major catastrophes in the past year through methods the Justice League couldn't employ. She's offering you partnership, not recruitment. That's significant. It means she respects your capabilities enough to treat you as an equal rather than an asset to control. Fourth category, the Justice League itself, us. Batman gestured at Superman. We're Earth's primary defense against existential threats. 7 core members: Superman, myself, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and Cyborg. Plus rotating roster of specialists. We're effective, but we're also reactive. We stop disasters after they start. We don't prevent them through preemptive action. Why not? John asked. Because that's a slope we can't afford to slide down, Superman said. If we start making decisions about who lives and dies based on future threat assessment, we become tyrants. Judge, jury, and executioner. Batman maintains contingency plans to neutralize each of us if we go rogue. That's the check on our power. But we don't eliminate threats preemptively. We respond when threats become active. John understood the philosophy. It was idealistic, honorable, and strategically unsound. But he also understood why Superman held to it. With his power, any compromise opened the door to absolute corruption. Fifth category, magical threats. There's an entire supernatural infrastructure on Earth. Gods, demons, sorcerers, entities that operate outside conventional physics. Constantine handles most of it. Zatanna, Dr. Fate. They fight wars the rest of us don't understand, using rules that don't make sense. Magic. The one thing UNSC science had never encountered. Covenant had technology that seemed magical, but was just advanced engineering. Forerunners had abilities that appeared supernatural, but were rooted in physics UNSC didn't understand. But actual magic? Reality manipulation through will and ritual? That was new, dangerous, unpredictable. Sixth category, everything else. Rogue metahumans, terrorist organizations, criminal empires, failed state conflicts, environmental catastrophes. The normal chaos of human civilization, except occasionally people throw cars at each other or shoot lightning from their hands. Batman closed the hologram. That's Earth. Multiple simultaneous conflicts requiring different solutions. The Justice League can't handle all of it. We're understaffed for the threat level we face, which brings me to my actual proposal. John waited. Join the Justice League, not as a subordinate, as an equal. Full operational authority, tactical command when appropriate. We need someone who understands warfare at strategic and tactical levels. Someone who's fought existential threats and won. Someone who won't hesitate when hesitation gets people killed. Superman's expression was complicated, hope mixed with concern. Chief, you'd be an incredible asset. But Bruce is right. We'd need you to have full autonomy. The League isn't military. We don't have strict chain of command. Everyone brings their expertise. We collaborate, not follow orders. John considered it. The offer was genuine. The need was real. And being part of an organization meant resources, intelligence, support structure. But it also meant compromise. Meant accepting Justice League methodology, reactive instead of proactive, idealistic instead of pragmatic. Meant working with people who didn't understand. That sometimes you eliminated threats before they could kill millions. I need time, John said, to fulfill my agreement with Luthor, to understand Earth's conflicts better, to decide where I could be most effective. Fair enough, Batman said. But Chief, one more thing. The Flood is still out there, in your universe. We sealed the rift, but we didn't eliminate the threat. If Darkseid finds another way to access dimensional bridges, if someone else discovers Forerunner portal technology, they could try again. This isn't over. John knew, had known since the moment they'd sealed the rift. The Flood would continue spreading in his universe. Installation 07's breach would cascade. The parasite would consume world after world. And he couldn't stop it. Couldn't warn the UNSC, couldn't return to finish the fight. He was alive. Earth was safe, but his universe was still dying. Then I'll make sure this Earth is ready, John said quietly. If the Flood comes back, they'll find more than one Spartan waiting. Superman smiled, sad but genuine. You're not alone anymore, Chief. Whatever you decide, League or independent or something else entirely. Earth's grateful. You saved us. John said nothing. Just thought about Cortana, about Installation 07, about the UNSC fighting wars he'd never see again. Spartans didn't quit, but sometimes they lost anyway. And all they could do was keep fighting in whatever war came next. LexCorp's research division occupied an entire sub-level beneath Metropolis. 5 stories of laboratories, clean rooms, and experimental facilities that made UNSC weapons development look primitive. John stood in the main observation deck, fully armored again after Cyborg's repairs, watching Luthor's scientists analyze holographic projections of Spartan augmentation protocols. He'd been here for 40 hours of his 60-hour commitment, another 20 to go. And every second felt like betrayal. Because they weren't just studying augmentation theory, they were designing implementation. The carbide ceramic ossification would be the primary challenge, Dr. Chen, Luthor's chief biotechnology researcher, said while manipulating a 3D model of enhanced skeletal structure. Covenant technology used plasma-resistant materials we can't replicate, but synthesized graphene lattices bonded at molecular level might achieve similar results. 80% of original effectiveness with significantly lower mortality rate during implementation. What mortality rate? John asked quietly. Dr. Chen glanced at him. Young, brilliant, morally blind to what she was designing. Current projections suggest 42% survival rate for full augmentation suite, better than your program's reported 56% failure rate. Those weren't failures, John said, voice harder than intended. They were children who died screaming in surgical bays while doctors tried to turn them into weapons. Sam, Renee, Jorge, Daisy, names, people, not statistics. The lab went quiet. Luthor, standing near the observation window with his hands clasped behind his back, turned slowly. "Nay, you're having moral objections," he said. "Not a question. I'm recognizing what you're building." John gestured at the schematics. "This isn't defense. This is weaponization of human biology. You're designing a program to create super soldiers, child conscription, surgical trauma, psychological conditioning. The Spartan 2 program broke more people than it saved, and you want to repeat it. Not repeat, improve." Luthor approached with measured steps. "Your program was rushed, developed under existential threat with limited resources and desperate timeline. We have the luxury of refinement, adult volunteers, gradual augmentation, psychological screening, better technology. We can achieve Spartan-level capability with significantly lower human cost. But you won't." John's HUD displayed the schematics again. Projected implementation timelines, facility requirements, subject procurement. "Your timeline shows accelerated development. 6-month prototype phase, 12-month mass production. That's not careful refinement. That's military urgency. You're preparing for war." "Earth is always at war," Luthor said flatly. "Darkseid attempts invasion every 18 months. Brainiac attacks our satellites. Mongol's warworld threatens our star system. We live under constant threat from beings who could destroy us on a whim. Superman stops most of it. But what happens when he can't? What happens when Darkseid finds kryptonite? When Superman's off-world? When the Justice League is overwhelmed? Do we just accept extinction because we're too ethical to defend ourselves effectively?" The argument had merit. John couldn't deny it. Earth was under constant threat. The Parademon assault proved Darkseid's commitment to conquest. And Superman, for all his power, was a single point of failure. But weaponizing children was still wrong. "Use adult volunteers," John said. "Military personnel, people who choose augmentation understanding the risks, not children who can't consent. The augmentation protocols work best on prepubescent physiology," Dr. Chen interjected. Bone growth, neural plasticity, muscular development, all optimized before age 15. Adult augmentation achieves maybe 60% effectiveness compared to childhood implementation. Then accept 60%, John said. Spartans were effective because we had no choice. You have choices. Make better ones. Luthor studied him with analytical precision. You're damaged by your experiences, traumatized by what was done to you. That's understandable. But Chief, you worked. You and the other Spartans saved humanity. The program's moral cost was horrific, but the strategic value was incalculable. Would you really rather have lost the war ethically than won it through necessary atrocity? John thought about Reach, about the Pillar of Autumn, about standing on Installation 04 watching the ring detonate, knowing that every human who died there had bought time for Earth to survive. Would he change it? Undo the Spartan program? Let the Covenant win because the moral cost was too high? No, he admitted quietly. I wouldn't change it. But I also wouldn't repeat it. Find another way, Luthor. There's always another way. Is there? Luthor gestured at the observation window showing Metropolis above. 7 billion people, most of them helpless, dependent on Superman's benevolence. What happens when that benevolence fails? When he's compromised? When Darkseid mind controls him and turns Earth's greatest hero into its destroyer? Do we have another way ready? Or do we die because we were too moral to prepare properly? Before John could respond, his motion tracker registered a priority alert. Watchtower transmission, emergency frequency. Chief, Batman's voice, clipped and urgent. We have a situation. Darkseid's forces just opened 3 simultaneous boom tubes over Metropolis, Gotham, and Washington, D.C. Full invasion force, thousands of parademons, heavy assault units, and something new, biological signatures matching flood combat forms integrated with apocalyptian genetics. John's blood ran cold. He kept samples from the desert battle and weaponized them. We're evacuating civilians, but we need every combatant we can field. Justice League is deploying now. Can you break from Luthor's facility? John looked at Luthor, at the scientists, at the schematics for a program that would turn children into weapons to defend a world that might not survive the next hour. I'm en route, John said. Mobilize Argus assets. Contact Waller. Tell her we need kryptonite munitions deployed to all 3 engagement zones. The flood hybrid biomass will be vulnerable to radiation disruption. Already coordinating, Batman confirmed. Luthor, I know you can hear this. We need LexCorp defense assets. And now. Luthor's expression didn't change, just calculated, weighed, made the same cost-benefit analysis he always made. Granted, he said finally. But Chief, our conversation isn't finished. This attack proves my point. Earth needs systemic defenses, not heroic intervention. Return after the battle. We'll continue discussion. John didn't answer, just activated MJOLNIR's mobility systems and ran for the exit. The elevator was too slow. He found a stairwell, took the steps 4 at a time, emerged into LexCorp's main lobby to chaos. People were screaming, running. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, John could see Metropolis's skyline burning. Boom tubes tore reality open above the city like wounds. Parademons poured through in swarms, hundreds, thousands, more than the desert assault by orders of magnitude. And among them, its larger signatures. Biological monstrosities that moved with horrible coordination, flood parademon hybrids. Darkseid had successfully integrated parasite genetics with apocalyptian warriors, the worst of both species. John burst through LexCorp's entrance onto streets already descending into panic. Civilians fled in every direction. Emergency vehicles screamed toward disaster zones. And overhead, a red and blue blur carved through parademon formations with heat vision and supersonic impacts. Superman, buying time for evacuation. But even he was struggling against these numbers. A parademon dove toward fleeing civilians. John's rifle came up smooth, 3-round burst punching through wing membrane and cranial armor. The creature crashed 20 feet from the civilians, who scattered in terror. More incoming. John's motion tracker lit up with contacts. Dozens within engagement range, hundreds beyond. Too many for one Spartan. But he wasn't alone anymore. A motorcycle screamed around the corner, advanced design, jet-powered, armed with weapons that fired explosive rounds. Batman rode it like extension of his body, dodging plasma fire, returning shots with perfect accuracy. He pulled up beside John without stopping. "Jump on," John did. The bike barely registered his armored weight. Reinforced suspension, designed for exactly this kind of extraction. Batman accelerated, weaving through crashed vehicles and rubble, heading toward the heaviest concentration of parademon forces. "League is splitting up," Batman said over the comm. "Diana's handling Washington. Flash has Gotham. We've got Metropolis. Cyborgs coordinating Argus deployment. Waller's teams are en route with kryptonite weapons." "What about the flood hybrids?" John asked, scanning for biological signatures. "Concentrated around 3 sites: STAR Labs, the power plant, and City Hall. They're not attacking randomly. They're targeting infrastructure, power, research, government. Darkseid's combining apocalyptian strategy with flood biomass acquisition. Tactically brilliant. Horrifying. The flood's instinct to consume combined with Darkseid's strategic intelligence created an enemy that adapted in real time, learned from every engagement, coordinated at civilization-ending scale. This wasn't an invasion. This was a field test. Darkseid was experimenting. Seeing if flood-enhanced forces could conquer Earth where pure apocalyptian strength had failed. And if it worked here, he'd deploy it across the multiverse. "Us, we need to eliminate the hybrids completely," John said. "Total biomass destruction. If even one infection form escapes, it could establish foothold." "Agreed. Which is why..." Batman swerved around a crashed bus. "We're heading to STAR Labs first. Dr. Stone's been developing something. Experimental weapon. Sonic resonance technology designed to disrupt cellular cohesion at frequencies that specifically target flood biomass. It's untested. Might kill us along with the parasites. But it's our best option for area effect sterilization." They rounded a corner and found hell. STAR Labs was under siege. Flood parademon hybrids swarmed the building, combat forms that moved with apocalyptian speed and flood adaptability, slamming into energy barriers that flickered and failed under sustained assault. Inside, whilst John could see scientists fighting desperately with improvised weapons, security teams burning through ammunition against enemies that regenerated from wounds. And coordinating it all, visible through the shattered windows, a mass of biomass that made John's threat assessment spike into critical. A grave mind. Small, nascent. Maybe only 50 hosts worth of intelligence, but growing with every person it consumed. "Batman," John said quietly. "That changes everything. A grave mind can coordinate dimensional manipulation. If it gains enough mass, it could open its own boom tubes, spread to other cities, other planets. Then we kill it," Batman said, ditching the bike and pulling weapons John hadn't seen before. Some kind of cryo grenades that would slow flood metabolism. Before it gets that chance. Superman landed beside them in a crater of pulverized concrete. His costume was scorched, face was grim. but his eyes still held determination. The evacuation's 40% complete. But Chief, there are people still trapped in STAR labs. Scientists, security, civilians who couldn't evacuate fast enough. We need to extract them before deploying area effect weapons. Tactical problem. Rescue operation in hostile territory against enemies that converted every casualty into additional force strength. Every second delayed gave the Gravemind more biomass. But abandoning civilians was unacceptable. John analyzed, calculated, made the call. Superman, extract civilians. You're fastest, most durable. Batman, provide covering fire and deploy cryo-weapons to slow flood advance. I'll locate Doctor. I'm Stone's sonic weapon and prep it for deployment. And if the Gravemind tries to stop you? Batman asked. John checked his ammo. 40 rounds, 3 cryo grenades from Batman's supply, shields at 98%. Then I'll demonstrate why Forerunners built Installation 04 instead of trying to negotiate with the Flood. He advanced on STAR. Labs alone. Behind him, Superman began extracting civilians at supersonic speed, a red and blue blur that saved lives faster than the Flood could take them. Ahead, the Gravemind's tendrils writhed. And somewhere in that biomass, John swore he heard laughter. Ancient, hungry, delighted that its old enemy had finally arrived. The Flood remembered Spartans, and it wanted revenge. The interior of STAR Labs was a nightmare rendered in flesh and metal. Flood biomass had converted entire sections of the facility into organic architecture. Walls pulsing with corrupted tissue, floors slick with infection spores, ceiling dripping with tendrils that reached for anything warm-blooded. John's motion tracker was useless here, every surface registering as hostile contact. His air filtration was working overtime, preventing spore inhalation that would mean infection within seconds. He moved through corridors that had become digestive tracts. Rifle up, shield status constantly monitored. 43%. The Flood biomass was producing some kind of acidic secretion that ate through energy barriers faster than conventional weapons. A combat form lurched from a side passage. Parademon physiology twisted into something worse. Additional limbs sprouting from torso. Apocalyptian armor fused with infected tissue. It moved with horrible speed, claws extended. John fired. 3 rounds center mass. The combat form staggered but didn't fall. Flood regeneration compensating for kinetic trauma. He adjusted aim, targeted the infection form embedded in the host's chest cavity. 2 rounds. Direct hit. The combat form collapsed, biomass losing cohesion without the parasite's controlling intelligence. But 3 more emerged from the walls, literally through the walls, biomass parting to allow passage. John's shields dropped to 38% as acidic discharge splashed across his armor. He rolled, came up firing, and eliminated 2 infection forms with precision shooting that would have impressed Linda-058. The 3rd combat form got close, too close, slamming armored fist into John's chest plate hard enough to crack ceramic composite. Shield collapse, 22%. John drove his combat knife into the combat form's infection form, twisted, withdrew. Biomass dissolution. But more were coming. The entire facility was infested. He needed that sonic weapon, now. Dr. Stone, John transmitted on emergency frequency. Location? Static. Then, Sub-Level 3, Research Lab 7. But Chief, the Gravemind's established central mass in the main laboratory. It's between you and the weapon, and it's talking. God help us, it's talking. John's blood went cold. Graveminds didn't just coordinate. They communicated, negotiated, manipulated. They were ancient intelligence wearing flesh like clothing, speaking with voices of 1,000 consumed minds. He'd heard one before, on Installation 05. The experience had been worse than any firefight. Because the grave mind didn't just want to kill you. It wanted you to understand why resistance was futile. John descended to sub-level 3 via service stairs, each level deeper showing progressively worse infestation. By sub-level 2, the walls were entirely biomass. By sub-level 3, he was walking through what might as well have been the interior of a living organism. The main laboratory doors had been torn open. Beyond them, a chamber that had once been cutting-edge research facility now served as throne room for something older than human civilization. The grave mind filled half the space, not as large as the one on Delta Halo, maybe only 200 hosts worth of mass, but growing with horrible speed. Tendrils extended in every direction, pulsing with neural activity, coordinating the assault on Metropolis through distributed intelligence. And at its center, a mass of faces, parademon, human, twisted together, that spoke with unified voice. Spartan. The word resonated through the chamber, through John's bones, through his soul. We remember you. Remember your kind. The Forerunner's children, forged in desperation, wielding their master's weapons against inevitability itself. John said nothing, just analyzed. The sonic weapon was visible across the chamber, cylindrical device, 8 feet tall, covered in equipment Dr. Stone had been using before the attack, maybe 60 feet away, past the Gravemind's central mass. You seek the weapon, the Gravemind observed. Technology designed to disrupt our cellular cohesion through resonance frequency. Clever, ineffective. We have already adapted. Consumed 12 scientists who understood its function. Their knowledge is ours. The weapon cannot harm us. Then you won't mind if I activate it, John said, already moving. Combat forms erupted from the biomass. 6, 8, 12. More than he could eliminate with remaining ammunition. His shields were at 18%. Structural integrity showing critical damage to chest plate. He fired anyway. Controlled bursts, each shot eliminating an infection form, dropping combat forms into biomass puddles. His ammunition counter clicked down. 30 rounds, 20, 15. The Gravemind laughed. Futile resistance. Admirable desperation. These are the qualities we cherish in consumption. You are worthy prey, Spartan. Your augmentations, your experience, your tactical intelligence. Adding you to our collective would increase our capability by significant magnitude. Surrender. Join us. Become eternal. John's rifle clicked empty. He dropped it, drew his combat knife, charged the nearest combat form. MJOLNIR's enhanced strength drove the blade through armored skull, through infection form, through corrupted tissue. The combat form fell. 4 more replaced it. His shields collapsed completely. 0%. Recharge offline. Bare armor against flood biomass. And he was still 40 feet from the weapon. A tendril lashed out from the Gravemind's mass, wrapped around John's leg, began pulling him toward the central biomass, toward consumption, toward becoming just another voice in the collective. John activated his armor's last resort. Emergency thruster pack, designed for zero-gravity maneuvering, barely functional after dimensional transit and combat damage. It fired once, enough thrust to tear free from the tendril, propel him across the chamber in uncontrolled trajectory. He crashed into the sonic weapon, armor screaming damage warnings, systems failing. But his hand found the activation control. No, the Gravemind said, suddenly urgent. You do not understand what that device will do. The frequency will not merely disrupt flood biomass. It will shatter cellular bonds in all organic matter within range, including yours. Activate it, and you die with us. John's hand hovered over the control. Analyze the weapon's specifications visible on Dr. Stone's terminal. The Gravemind was right. The sonic resonance would destroy all biological tissue indiscriminately. User would need to evacuate minimum 200 meters before activation. He was in a sealed sub-level surrounded by flood biomass with no shields, no ammunition, and armor barely functional. Evacuation was impossible. "You see truth now," the grave mind whispered. "The weapon is suicide. Join us instead. Survival through unity, eternity through consumption. We offer what your masters never could: immortality, purpose, understanding of the universe's fundamental nature." John thought about Cortana, about Sam diving to save him on Chiquetti 4, about Jorge pushing him off Long Night of Solace, about every Spartan who died so humanity could survive one more day. Spartans didn't quit, didn't surrender, didn't compromise with extinction, even when survival was impossible. "I've got a better idea," John said. He activated the sonic weapon, set timer for 30 seconds, and ran. MJOLNIR's damaged servos screamed protest as he sprinted for the exit. Combat forms lunged. He dodged, stumbled, crashed through them with pure momentum. The Gravemind's tendrils lashed out, trying to stop him, slow him, hold him for the weapon's activation. 20 seconds. He reached the stairwell, took the steps 3 at a time. Behind him, the Gravemind's voice turned from persuasion to rage. "Spartan, you doom yourself. The frequency will kill you." 15 seconds. Sub-level 2. Still climbing, legs burning, augmented muscles pushed beyond sustainable limits. Armor's medical systems pumping stimulants to keep biological functions active. 10 seconds. Sub-level 1. Almost to ground floor. Or through windows, he could see Superman pulling the last civilians clear. Could see Batman deploying some kind of energy barrier around the building's perimeter. They knew what was coming. 5 seconds. Ground floor. John crashed through the exit, sprinted across STAR Labs' courtyard in armor that was more liability than asset now. Every step a battle against failing systems and exhausted biology. 0. The sonic weapon activated. The sound wasn't audible in traditional sense. It was felt. A vibration that reached into cellular structure, into molecular bonds, into the fundamental architecture of organic matter. Through STAR Labs' reinforced walls, John heard the Gravemind scream, not with voice, with dying biomass, with 200 hosts worth of infection dissolving simultaneously, with ancient intelligence realizing, too late, that the Spartan had chosen death over compromise. Except John wasn't dead. He'd made it 197 meters, 3 meters short of minimum safe distance. Close enough. The sonic frequency washed over him like physical force. His HUD went dark. MJOLNIR's systems failed completely, but his augmented biology, bones reinforced with carbide ceramic, organs enhanced beyond baseline human resilience, held. Barely. He collapsed 20 feet from Batman's energy barrier, armor smoking, medical readouts showing catastrophic system failure and biological trauma that would have killed an unaugmented human instantly. But Spartans didn't die that easily. Superman was there in seconds, tearing away damaged armor plating with careful precision, checking for breathing, for pulse, for any sign of life. "He's alive," the Kryptonian said, and a relief flooding his voice. "Barely, but alive." Batman deactivated the barrier, approached with medical scanner active. The sonic weapon worked, flood biomass completely neutralized. But the frequency did serious damage. Cellular degradation, organ stress, neural trauma. He needs medical attention beyond what we can provide here. "Watchtower," Superman said, already lifting John with impossible gentleness. "Full medical bay, and contact Dr. Stone. We need someone who understands Spartan physiology." John tried to speak. Couldn't. Systems were offline. Voice was gone. But his mind was clear enough to understand. They'd won. The grave mind was dead. The Flood parademon hybrids, cut off from central coordination, were being eliminated by League forces and Argus teams across all 3 cities. Darkseid's invasion was failing. The Earth had survived. And somehow, impossibly, so had he. Through fading consciousness, John heard Superman's voice. "You did it, Chief. You stopped them. Saved millions. Standard mission outcome. Acceptable casualties. Victory achieved through tactical sacrifice. Exactly what Spartans were designed for." Consciousness failed. Darkness took him. But before it did, John allowed himself something he rarely permitted. Relief. He'd found a new war. New allies. New purpose. And this time, maybe he wouldn't have to fight alone. Have to fight. 3 weeks after the Battle of Metropolis, Master Chief John-117 stood on the Watchtower's observation deck, watching Earth turn below. The armor was repaired. Better than repaired, actually. Cyborg had integrated nth metal into the shield generators, improving recharge efficiency by 40%. Dr. Stone had recalibrated the fusion reactor to interface seamlessly with this universe's electromagnetic spectrum. Batman had added tactical subroutines to the HUD that incorporated Justice League threat databases. Superman had personally tested the structural reinforcements, declaring them Kryptonian resistant. The biological damage from the sonic weapon had taken longer to heal. 2 weeks in medical suspension, while his augmented physiology knitted itself back together. Dr. Stone had been fascinated. Spartan healing factor was slower than metahuman regeneration, but more thorough, repairing damage at cellular level rather than just closing wounds. John was 97% combat effective now. Close enough. Behind him, the observation deck door opened. He didn't turn. The motion tracker identified the visitor before they spoke. "Thought I'd find you here," Superman said, moving to stand beside him. Brooding in observation decks seems to be a Justice League tradition. Batman does it, Diana does it, now you. "Not brooding?" John said. "Assessing." Same thing, different words. Superman smiled slightly. "The rebuilding's going well. Metropolis, Gotham, Washington. Structural damage was extensive, but casualties were surprisingly low. 73 dead. Horrible. But considering the scale of the invasion, you saved millions, Chief." John said nothing. 73 was still 73. Each one a name, a person. A life that ended because he hadn't been fast enough, smart enough, better. But Superman was right. Millions survived. Earth survived. The mission succeeded. "Luthor's been making noise?" Superman continued. "Published an editorial about how the battle proves Earth needs systemic defenses, not heroic intervention. He's using you as his proof of concept, human augmentation and technology defeating threats the Justice League struggled against. Public opinion's split. Some people agree, others think he's fear-mongering." "He's not wrong," John said quietly. "Earth is vulnerable. Darkseid will attack again. Others will follow. You can't be everywhere at once. And the League can't handle every threat. Luthor's solution is morally repugnant, but his strategic assessment is accurate. Which is why we need you." Superman turned to face him directly. "The League voted. Unanimous decision. We're offering you full membership. Not as support personnel, as a core member. Equal authority. Tactical command when appropriate. You've proven you can handle impossible situations. We want that expertise, that experience, that willingness to make hard calls." John had known this was coming, had been analyzing the offer since Batman first proposed it. The benefits were substantial: resources, intelligence, infrastructure, allies. The costs were equally significant: compromise, ideological differences, reactive methodology instead of proactive threat elimination. "Okay, I need to finish my commitment to Luthor first," John said. 20 hours of consultation remaining. After that you'll join?" Hope in Superman's voice. "After that, I'll make my decision." John gestured at Earth below. "This isn't my world. Wasn't supposed to be my fight. But the dimensional rift sealed. I'm here permanently. So I need to understand. What kind of protector does Earth need? The League's idealism? Waller's pragmatism? Luthor's human supremacy? Or something else entirely?" "What about what you need?" Superman asked. "You've been fighting for 30 years, Chief. Since you were 6 years old. When do you get to stop being a weapon and start being a person?" The question hit harder than expected, because John didn't know how to be anything except a Spartan. Didn't know what purpose looked like outside of combat. Didn't know if he could be something other than humanity's blunt instrument. "Spartans don't retire," John said finally. "We fight until we die, or there's nothing left to fight for. Earth has plenty of threats. I'll find my place in that fight. Question is what form that takes." "Fair enough?" Superman extended his hand. "Whatever you decide, know this. You're not alone anymore. The League's here. I'm here. Earth's grateful. And when you're ready to talk about Cortana, about Installation 07, about the universe you lost, I'm willing to listen." John took the hand, shook it, felt the restraint in Superman's grip, power that could shatter mountains, held in perfect control because the Kryptonian understood responsibility. Maybe idealism wasn't weakness. Maybe it was strength of a different kind. "I'll think about the League's offer," John said. "Give you an answer after I finish with Luthor. That's all I ask." Superman released his hand. "Diana wants to spar with you, by the way. Says she's never fought someone with your tactical mindset. Flash wants to race your armor's sprint speed. Batman wants to run joint training exercises. Cyborg wants to discuss technology integration. We're enthusiastic about potential membership." John almost smiled. Almost. The observation deck door opened again. This time, Amanda Waller entered, flanked by 2 Argus security personnel. Her expression was all business. "Master Chief," she said without preamble, "I need your tactical assessment on a situation." Waller paused, glanced at Superman. "Private conversation." "I'll leave you to it," Superman said, heading for the exit. "Chief, the offer stands, always." When they were alone, Waller pulled up a holographic display. Satellite imagery, energy signatures, dimensional analysis. "The rift you sealed?" she said. "It's showing residual instability, minor. Probably nothing. But our dimensional specialists are concerned. There's a 0.003% chance it could reopen, spontaneously, without warning." John studied the data. The probability was minimal, statistically negligible, but 0.003% had killed Spartans before. "What do you need?" he asked. "Contingency planning. Worst case scenario, the rift reopens, flood biomass comes through, we need immediate response. I want you working with Argus to develop anti-flood protocols, weapons, tactics, containment procedures, not full-time, just consultation. Independent contractor status. You maintain autonomy, we get expertise." Another offer, another faction. "I'll consider it," John said, "after I finish with Luthor and decide about the League." Waller smiled, thin, professional. "You're in demand, Chief. Everyone wants the Spartan who stopped extinction. Just remember, Earth's threats don't wait for you to finish making decisions. Darkseid's already planning his next move. The flood might not be done. And there are things out there we haven't encountered yet. Things worse than apocalypse or parasites. I know, John said quietly. I've seen galaxies burn, civilizations fall, extinction events that consumed entire species. Earth's threats are real, but they're not unique. The universe is full of things that want to kill you. Question is whether you face them divided or united. Spoken like a soldier. Waller deactivated the hologram. I'll await your decision. But Chief, whatever you choose, don't wait too long. The universe doesn't give second chances. She left, and John was alone again, watching Earth turn, thinking about choices and consequences, and what it meant to be a weapon in a world that didn't understand the price of survival. 48 hours later, John stood in LexCorp's main laboratory, finishing his final consultation session. Luthor studied him across the holographic displays, calculating as always. You've given us valuable data. The augmentation protocols will save lives, create defenders, prove humanity's potential. Or create weapons you'll use against Superman, John said flatly. Perhaps both. Luthor didn't deny it, but that was always the deal. You knew what I'd do with the information. You gave it anyway. Why? John considered the question. Thought about the Spartan program, about children conscripted and broken and forged into miracles, about the cost of survival and whether some prices were too high. Because Earth needs options, he said finally. The League's idealism works until it doesn't. Waller's pragmatism works until it becomes tyranny. Your human supremacy works until it becomes genocide. But maybe, if all three approaches exist, check each other, balance competing ideologies, Earth survives. Not because one faction wins, because none of them can afford to fail. Luthor studied him, then smiled, genuine for once. You understand power dynamics. Good. That makes you dangerous, valuable, and potentially the only person on Earth who could unite competing factions when necessary. I look forward to seeing what you choose. So do I, John said. He left LexCorp Tower for the last time, stepped onto Metropolis streets that had been rebuilt from Parademon assault, and made his decision. Not League, not Argus, not Luthor. Something new, independent operator, consulting with all factions, bound to none. Free to make tactical decisions without ideological compromise. Ready to deploy when Earth faced threats too complex for single-faction response. A Spartan without an army. A weapon without a master. But not alone. Never alone again. Earth had allies, resources, heroes and soldiers and scientists all working toward survival. And now it had one more protector. Someone who understood that survival required hard choices, and that idealism needed pragmatism. That humanity's strength came from unity, not supremacy. Master Chief John-117 walked through Metropolis, armor gleaming in afternoon sun, HUD displaying tactical data on a world worth defending. The dimensional rift was sealed. The flood was contained. Darkseid was delayed. But the universe was infinite, and threats were eternal. Spartans didn't quit. They adapted. They persevered. They fought until there was nothing left to fight for. And Earth, this strange, wonderful, complicated Earth, was worth fighting for. John activated his comm system, opened a channel to the Watchtower. This is Master Chief John-117, he said. I've made my decision about League membership. I'm declining full-time status, but I'll accept consulting position, independent tactical advisor. And I work with the League when our objectives align, maintain autonomy when they don't. Non-negotiable terms. Silence. Then Batman's voice. Acceptable. Welcome to the team, Chief. on your terms. And just like that, Master Chief had a new war, a new world, a new purpose. The multiverse had torn him from everything he knew, stranded him in a universe of gods and monsters, cost him his home, his AI companion, his original mission. But it had also given him something he'd never had before. A choice. Not about whether to fight, Spartans always fought, but about how to fight, who to fight for, why the fight mattered. And for the first time in 30 years, John-117 chose for himself. Earth was home now, and he would defend it until his last breath, until his final stand, until the universe itself went dark. Because that's what Spartans did. They finished the fight,